Woke pirates, yes, they robbed I, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. My head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Sergeant Major with Veterans for Freedom. Well, actually, no. I'm the magnanimous Gen Xer male, Jeff Evely. Welcome to the Radical Candor Podcast. This is our first week of the Radical Candor Podcast, so I'm still getting my battle rhythm down. Pardon me, folks, but thank you very much for being with us here this morning. I will go ahead and say good morning to everybody before we get started. I got a really great show lined up here with us. Chet Chisholm is with us, ladies and gentlemen. And Chet is a now retired paramedic in Nova Scotia who spoke at the NCI, particularly regarding the attrition crisis that is causing, an operational crisis now in the emergency health services. And it's all very analogous and familiar to me with my experience in Canada's military, because that's exactly what's happening across the board, whether it's healthcare, emergency services, or the military. We're in the midst of an institutional crisis across the board. Our institutions are in a state of collapse, and Chet has some pretty insightful firsthand experiences to all the lead up to that in Nova Scotia Emergency Health Services. So I'm going to be really excited to chat with him here in a minute. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and say my good mornings. Mother of the Drummers is with us as always, saying a snowy good morning. Jeff and Chat shared on X. Thank you very much. Yes, please share this out. Share it all over the place because I am the worst guy for not promoting my own stuff. Getting better. I did pretty good here this morning, but I could definitely use all the help that we can get. And Andrew is saying, good morning, Jeff. Good morning, troops. Giving us the triple slashy. Good morning to you, Andrew. Thanks for being with us. Brian says, grand rising, blessings from Ontariable. Shalom. Shalom to you, my brother. And Ontariable it is. I hope you got a motorcycle out there because that is the only redeeming quality of Ontariable. And Rob is here saying, good morning, troops, patriots, and bigots. Give us the triple slashy right back at you, brother. Colleen says, good morning, wonderful people. Good morning to you, you wonderful person. Cindy, our most faithful of all watchers, says, morning, Jeff and friends. Hope you're all staying warm. I'm staying pretty warm, man. It was snowing here yesterday, and then it rained last night. That's just Nova Scotia for you, I guess. We're pretty close to the Gulf Stream, so it's a lot warmer here than people realize. And Chris is saying, good morning, giving us the triple slashy right back at you, brother. Evelyn says, good morning, all. And Marion says, good morning in a very cold Ontariable. And she's given us the hearts. Good morning to you. Susan is here, says, good morning, everyone. Hey, Susan, thanks for always being with us. Oh, here's Tawny saying, rising and shining as Saskatchewan thaws. Are you guys thawing out there? I wonder how Alberta's doing this morning because they had a real bad cold snap there and nobody could drive their EVs. So is anybody going to take any lessons from that in terms of the people in charge? Well, only time will tell, but I have my doubts. And Evelyn is saying, got my Aunt Evelyn hat on this morning. So proud of Chet. Yes, I came to realize that when I met Chet on Sunday, actually, he was saying that Evelyn was his aunt, or aunt, I guess, but I'm East Coast, so I say aunt. A small world, eh? I think the one kind of great thing about everything that we're going through right now is that we get to meet all the greatest Canadians alive. People are finding each other and coming together, and it's pretty great. So Holly says, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. And Debbie is saying good morning from Tabor, Alberta. Special appreciation to the Westerners for being with us so early. And Colleen is saying, who's your aunt? So we can say hi. Well, I think we just covered that. That's Evelyn here. And Jane is with us saying good morning. And Century 2020 over on YouTube, giving us the triple slashy. So thanks, everybody, for being with us. And I think I'll go ahead and dive right into it. Here is our quote for the day. This is Winston Churchill, who needs no introduction, I guess, but he was the Prime Minister of the UK, of Britain, when during World War II, which would have been the previous fourth turning. And as I'm always talking about on here, we are in a fourth turning, which is the crisis era we enter into every 4 generations, when the generation born in the wake of the previous fourth turning reaches peak institutional power. And here he is basically talking about his own generation and saying, their insatiable lust for power is only equaled by their incurable impotence in exercising it. Well, I think we can all relate to that. That is what we're seeing across the board. It's a bunch of power dogs who are totally inept. And, as I like to say, that is probably one thing that we have going for us is the people that we're up against here are just inept. So that works in our favor, I certainly hope. Okay, and speaking of ineptitude in leadership, here is Justin Trudeau, our meme for the day, and it's a picture of Justin Trudeau's face. It says "Build Back Better" underneath it, and he is superimposed over an entire wasteland of outdoor encampments here, the homeless encampments that we're seeing popping up in every city across Canada. It's a really sad state of affairs, but that's about where we are right now. This is his idea of building back better, is squeezing us, bleeding us dry, driving us out of our own homes. And there'll be plenty of Chinese oligarchs on standby to scoop up all that residential property, I am sure. So without further ado, I think I'll bring in the man of the hour. It's Chet. How you doing, brother? Good morning to you.
Morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. It's actually a pretty nice warm day out here.
Yeah, it's super nice out.
Yeah.
Super nice out.
It doesn't feel like January anymore, but thanks very much for El Nino. And hey, weren't you saying that you had something in common with Winston Churchill there before we went live?
Yeah, we had the same birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That was I guess cosmic in a sense.
Yeah.
That I ended up picking that quote for today, and here Chet has the same birthday as Winston Churchill.
Yeah, no, November 30th.
Yeah, super cool. And everybody's really happy to see you. They're saying good morning to you. So I thought I'd kind of start things off here, Chet. Just to kind of give a quick data point as to where we are right now with healthcare. This was making the rounds on X yesterday. Bev is tweeting out, "This is Jan Arden's hospital experience in Alberta. Video credit, blah, 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 blah." So Jan Arden apparently had a bad spill at home. Household accidents are now the fourth leading cause of death in Canada, the third leading cause being COVID-19, whereas during the entire pandemic, it was actually the other way around, with household accidents being the third leading cause of death and COVID-19 being the fourth. But here, I guess she was playing with a VR headset and ended up splitting her head on the counter. And this is what her experience was like. Here we go.
So, because there's cutbacks in the medical system here in Canada.
If you're just listening, they're all masked up as well.
They've asked us to clean our own head. So, that's what we're doing. And are you all right?
Yeah.
Do you feel barfy?
Does that feel nice?
Is it just, I feel so fucking good.
I'm just holding on this because it is soaking up the blood.
Oh, God. This is the worst Tinder date I've ever been on.
And if you're just listening, they're showing the staples in the back of her head that they ended up applying. And it says, "Had a little accident because I fell into my kitchen counter whilst using virtual reality goggles." And here is the back of her head all stapled up. That is a nasty gash indeed.
Okay, I still look a little wacky. Day 2 of my wiping out VR virtual reality headset goggle incident. So embarrassing. I lasted 30 seconds. Anyway, at the hospital, I think you noticed Nigel, my friend visiting from the UK, they had him clean my head they left 4 towels and a basin filled with warm water, and just said to him, "Do you mind cleaning this out?" Which he did. He didn't know what he was doing. And then they sent me home with these. I'm like, "How long do these staples stay in my head?" And he said 12 days. And I said, "Oh, do I just come back to get them out?" Or he goes, "No, I'll just send you home with these. You can get a friend to take them out."
So the 2 prongs face the bottom. There's the 2 prongs.
Yep.
They're going to slide under the staple.
Yep.
Then you close the scissor.
Yep.
Then lift.
Close the scissor and then lift.
That's right. It's getting caught on the gauze, that one.
Got it.
Just unbelievable. But that is the current state of affairs in Canada's healthcare system. RJ Sorry over on Rubble. Good morning to you, brother. He says, LOL WTF. Yeah, that is about the size of it. It's a very sad state of affairs. So whatever you do, you should probably take steps to ensure that you don't have to go and seek help from the Canadian healthcare system, because the cure is probably worse than the disease at this point. Okay, and here is Chet at the NCI, and he gave testimony there March 16th, 2023. And we're going to kind of get into all the things that he's talking about here. So, and I am not in the habit of making people watch themselves when we're on the live stream here. But Chet, why don't you set this up a little bit for us, brother? What brought you to the NCI?
So there's a few things. So initially, when COVID kind of kicked off, I learned about things were kind of, I heard like the COVID rumblings in like December of 2019, because I had no people in the Canadian Armed Forces, and they said, "Hey, we had guys who just came back from Wuhan. They were super duper sick. pay attention to what's happening in China and what's going on here, because it's probably going to affect you, like when it is you get back to work. And so I, kept my ear to the ground, and my first kind of thought and approach was, okay, something's happening. And like Taiwan was talking about this nasty pneumonia that they had observed. And my first thought was, what do we need to know about this? How do we treat people with it? Like, how is this different from other pneumonias we've experienced? And like, what's the best way to help people moving forward as this thing unfolds? And what initially started was concern and like trying to learn about the disease, transitioned from being concerned about that to being concerned about what they were doing in response to it. Because the first thing you should do if something is considered an emergency is, bring the tension down and keep everybody calm and not panic. The analogy I like to use is, think of it like for instance, like if we have like a car accident on the highway, the first thing that we do when we get there is we when we show up and we identify who the patients are, who needs help. We close off that area. We may have to shut down the highway briefly, but it's just until we can reroute things around it, because we need to keep that highway open, because we still need to bring resources in to help the people that we've been sent to help, right? And all of those other people are depending on them getting their things done too. And it should be the same thing for a pandemic. And we had all these things in place. Like we had like pandemic protocols since like the SARS-CoV-1 back in, when was that, 2001, 2003 or something?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, I was in high school at the time anyway. But, kitty cat's here. She always shows up when I start talking. And so initially, actually, like I had reached out to like Tim Pool and Adam Krigler when they did their show together, and had some very good conversations with Adam Krigler and said like, here's all the stuff I know, and talked about what was going on, all the things that they were lying about. But that's a whole other story. But when it came to the NCI, I unfortunately, despite my better judgment, got vaccinated against COVID because came to the point where, because I was off work due to injury from work, and you have only so much time that you're allowed to be off work before they, take your job from you. And so I saw the writing on the wall, what was happening with the emergency medical system, and was hearing from colleagues how things were falling apart, and just seeing how the way like COVID patients were and just how things were handled. And so like felt an immense need to get back to work, not only to save my job, but to like, go back and have somebody talk some sense while we were there. And, sense of duty overrided better judgment, because I had said no initially.
Yeah, I can relate to everything you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of things. A lot of people got vaccinated against unemployment, or they got vaccinated to protect themselves and their family, not from COVID-19, but from the government. And I certainly fell in that category because I felt I needed to get back to work. And like, I wasn't against the vaccine initially, because I just like, it should be your choice. It's the way it works in medicine. It's informed consent. And
1000%.
yeah, and I ended up developing pericarditis, which is inflammation there's a fibrous sac that lines your heart. It kind of works as a shock absorber, holds your heart in place. That became inflamed. I might have had a touch of myocarditis too. Ended up being seen I ended up like collapsing in the yard at my mom and dad's place. Was seen in the emerge a number of times over the course of the summer, and just couldn't get anyone to take me seriously. Every doc was like, I said, oh, it's probably something else, or it's, we have no idea. And eventually I would, go to my family physicians like, look, I want my EKGs. I want to know what's going on here. I want my EKGs, my blood work. When I got them back, it's like, this is textbook pericarditis. And I was like, as soon as I pointed that out, and the response I got from my family physician, and these are his words, and was, because of course he wouldn't see patients in person, never did a set of vitals on me, never did a physical assessment. Anyone who saw me was like, "Oh my God, you look terrible. You look like you're dying."
So you weren't seeing him in person here?
No, he wouldn't see patients in person
Wow.
during COVID, unless he deemed it was necessary. So it was only ever over the phone. And his response when I said I went these are textbooks, like my EKGs. Like you could put these in a textbook, and that's what pericarditis looks like. But his response was, "You need to shut the fuck up. I don't care what it is you think you see. We're not entertaining any ridiculous rabbit hole you want to go down. You're not getting a cardiac stress test. You're not getting a cardiac MRI. Conversation's over." I was able to get like a cardiac, an echocardiogram, which is when they ultrasound your heart, but that was done 6 months after the initial injury. I've never actually been able to see it. I've gotten like the report that says, "Hey, this is clear." I'm not trained to go in depth into reading them or anything, but like I was never allowed to see, like, I want to see like the actual like pictures and stuff. But like I know like on like my EKGs, like even during like the echocardiogram, I was throwing PVCs, which are preventricular contractions, meaning the lower chambers of my heart were contracting out of time, which usually like sometimes you'll have like 1 or 2 of those in a day. It's normal, but for them to be pretty consistent, it's like, okay, we should probably look at something here. But anyways, tried to get people to listen. It started hearing from other people that I knew, members of the Canadian Armed Forces who had been injured, friends of mine who had been injured, colleagues who had been injured. And you come up to January of 2022. Is that when the convoy started? Was 2022?
Yeah, January.
Yeah. A buddy of mine's a medic in New Brunswick, and he got a hold of me right around that time and said, "Hey man, we were talking about what happened to you, like me and some of the other guys at work, and we were waiting in the hallway with a patient in the emergency room, or at the emergency room, and the other crew piped up and said, yeah, like in the last couple of weeks, we've had 3 kids, like teenagers, young people in their 20s, have the same issue. Myocarditis, pericarditis, or like POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So like when you change, like if you stand up, your heart rate skyrockets, and can be dangerous, can lead to people passing out and stuff. It's, again, usually a sign of some form of cardiac injury. Mm-hmm. And then the other crew piped up and said, yeah, we had one too in the last couple of weeks. And so that's 4 kids split between 2 ambulance crews in Moncton, New Brunswick, which has a population of about 80,000 people in the span of about 3 to 4 weeks. The odds of all of that lining up are astronomical. We don't do cardiac patients like for kids, like ever. Right. I've had two cardiac patients that were under the age of 50. One was a dude who was in his 30s who was like severely obese. So, and the other was a 17-year-old girl who had an artificial heart valve let go. But that's very different. I had never seen myocarditis in my entire career of 12 years. I knew what it was, obviously, but never seen it. And so when he told me that was when the convoy was happening. That's when I said, you know what, I'm gonna go to Ottawa. I'm gonna let people know, because that's where everybody is, and that's where you can get people. And hopefully, I get someone to listen. I had specifically set out to go find Viva, and like Viva had known who I was because I've been a fan of his podcast for a long time. I left Nova Scotia. It took me, with taking breaks, and like I stopped at a friend's place in New Brunswick because I was very, very sick at that point. It basically took me 2 days to get to Edmundston, which is right on the Quebec border. And by the time I got there, I just realized I was way too sick, and I was like, I can't go the whole way. I can't stand out in the cold like this. I can't.
Wow.
And it made, in hindsight, it was for the best, because I'm kind of a shithead punk, and I would have been standing right on the front, and anyone who stood on the front got the crap beat out of them by the cops, and that wouldn't have probably gone very well with somebody as sick as I was. And so I turned around, made my way back home, took quite some time to rest up, and I saw what happened with the protests in Ottawa, and then it was disheartening to see for sure. And then James started marching, and I spoke at the Canada Marches panel in Ottawa. I did it this way, but I did it virtually. But I spoke as part of the panel there, alongside people such as like Ken Drysdale, who was one of the NCI commissioners, and Dr. Laura Braden, among many other people. And then I was interviewed by Steve Kirsch soon after that, and continued to talk to more and more people up until the summer, when a certain fella who marched across the country came and asked for me by name because he wanted to talk to me. And James and I had a very, very good long conversation. I told him everything that was going on. And then along with Dr. Laura Braden, I helped set up the National Citizens Inquiry in Nova Scotia. The real unsung hero for that is Dave Ross. Like you never see him on podcasts or anything, but he's the guy that everybody just needs to go and, shake his hand and give him a pat on the back, because he's the guy who funded it. He set it up. He's the guy who got like Dr. Peter McCullough to come and talk, and he's like, he put the whole thing on his credit card, for Christ's sake.
Wow.
Like, he helped me out a lot. And he got the whole thing set up. So I helped organize that. I connected with Viva around this time last year, to be honest. Told him what was going on and told him about the NCI. Got him added as a witness to testify, and testified myself, where I talked about my experience, because when I went off work due to post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's a kind of a long story to explain. And the goal was to have me go back to work, because my whole psychiatric team was like, hey, if we send you for therapy, I think we'll have you back to work in a couple weeks, maybe a month or two. And the first day of like my intense treatment was the first day of COVID lockdowns. And it's kind of funny because so I don't have him anymore. He unfortunately passed away, but I had like my PTSD kind of like support cat named Salem. And he had come with me to go to my appointment, because I was dropping him off for a vet appointment. And when I got there, they're like, yeah, we can't let your cat come in because of COVID. And it's like I have to go to like a psych appointment. Like, I can't let him stay here. Like, it's in like an hour away. And anyways, they wouldn't even let my cat go into the vet. I took him to my psych appointment. He actually got to hang out and ran around her house and hung out with the other patients and stuff. But that was the only time. Like, after that, everything was shut down. I'm not allowed to be seen in person, so all my treatment was canceled indefinitely. So I sat on my thumbs for about a year, and then I was able to get in and see somebody like sporadically here and there, but it was never consistent and never really got anywhere, and things kept getting canceled, and then it got put on indefinite hiatus, where it sat for ages. I haven't started seeing someone until like a couple months ago. So like I was in limbo for like 2 years. During that time, as I said, I had to get vaccinated if I wanted to try to keep my job. And they made it mandatory. Because I wasn't able to get in for therapy, and I was also blocked from returning to work regardless. I was kept off on leave long enough that my employer fired me. So after 12 years, I was terminated. Which, there goes the pension I would have had. There's all those years of seniority and
Wow.
all that, and a good paycheck. Like I'm one of the fortunate ones where I still have my WCB check, but like it's like this much versus like what I would make. And like to add insult to injury, they did the mandatory vaccine thing on me and Sir Winston Churchill's birthday, so everybody got put on leave. And soon after, I got this would be the end of 2022. I got this in the mail. It's a thank you for your service card. We commend you for your commitment to the people in Nova Scotia. Your dedication and tenacity have been so appreciated by your team and all of us here at EMC. I'm going to cover the names here, but so there's for certificate of appreciation presented to Chet Chisholm for 10 years, so we've been 12 at this point, as a paramedic providing care to Nova Scotians, dated this day in December of 2022. So I got that in the mail, and in the same envelope they sent me my termination letter.
Oh my God.
In which it says, I'm just going to read you the first paragraph because there's a whole bunch of other stuff. It's like talking about like pension and benefits and all that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But dear Chet, this letter is a continuation of our correspondence to you dated March 2nd, 2021. No correspondence exists. Nobody's spoken to me in years. As of today, you have not been cleared by your healthcare team, and we have exhausted all options and attempts on our duty to accommodate your ability to return to work. No one's even talked to me. There's been nothing done. This is to formally notify you of your change in employment with Emergency Medical Care Incorporated, and we regret the necessity to end your employment relationship under these circumstances. Blah, blah, blah. Talked about your benefits, your pension bits and vacation pay will be paid out, and blah, blah, blah. And I talked about that in my testimony at the NCI. I talked about getting pericarditis and what that experience was like, and how nobody would even listen to me. And I have textbook symptoms. I had the chest pain, shortness of breath. It was all worsened when you laid on my back. I was diaphoretic. I lost a whole bunch of weight. Christ, I would be like bedridden for 16 to 20 hours a day. My EKGs are textbook. My blood work was all out of whack. It's all, I won't go in all details on that, but it's just because some of it will be Greek to some people, but it was textbook pericarditis, and we'll show the video later, but prior to the NCI, Morgan Kopzel and I went to one of these Nova Scotia like Q&A, like healthcare is in a mess town hall meetings with the premier, the minister of health, and like the head of the president of like Nova Scotia Health, and like some other physicians and stuff. And Morgan kind of called them out on like the vaccine mandates. And afterwards I went and told him, was like, look, I'm a paramedic with EHS. I was injured by these vaccines. I have pericarditis. I've lost my job as a result of this because I haven't been able to return to work in a timely manner. Like, when is this going to change? And the response I got from Michelle Thompson was, that's the policy. We're sticking with the policy, which is extra insulting when the fact is that she knows me because we're from the same hometown. She's an RN here. She's worked with my father. Like I've been a medic here for 12 years. She knows exactly who I am, and just kind of blew me off. And then like talked with like the head of Nova Scotia Health, got the same response, and even had like doctors like that were there like pipe up and saying, it's like, yeah, and we do know that these things are causing like myocarditis at a rate of 1 in 5,000. And like, it's like, dude, say that again. Like, say that again and listen to what you just said.
Yeah.
What you're admitting to me. Like, that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's crazy. Like, I'm from a town of like, I think it's like 20,000 people.
Yeah.
That means like you have at least 4 people here that are injured. And like, I know a lot of people with that issue, not all from this town, but like, I know quite a few. It's very, very concerning. Like, even when I went in for my echocardiogram, like when they ultrasounded my heart in like that November, I was registering at the x-ray desk, and they asked me, it's like, what are your vaccine dates? And I said May 21st, 2021. She goes, and your second one? It's like, I didn't get a second one. It's like, well, why not? And it's like, because I'm here being investigated for myopericarditis. And the other lady that was working on the desk too, she goes, yeah, and our neighbor's kid has myocarditis from those shots.
Wow. And Rob was just commenting, most doctors were told not to report things to their colleagues, would discipline them, strip their licenses to practice. Now, do you think that anything like that might have been a factor in your doctor's reaction, or were you aware of any such policies or sort of cultural phenomena that might have been driving that?
At the time, I wasn't aware of anything of like that, but like I know of doctors who've had that happen. We had a guy actually testify in Nova Scotia. I can tell you his name in a second, but he testified because that's what happened to him. He reported vaccine injuries, and the College of Physicians and Surgeons took his license to practice. I'll get you his name here in a second.
Sure.
Because
No
he
rush.
testified in Truro.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
That's the kind of weaponization of these licensing bodies too that we've seen across the board.
Yeah, it's awful, man.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson being drug in front of his professional standards boards. There's the licensing of physicians like Peter McCullough, one of the top cardiologists in the entire world, being stripped of his license. And the lawyers, any lawyers who stood up to this faced such action from the bar associations, so on and so forth. And this is the kind of thing that we run into now when we're trying to draw attention to these issues. You know, you might cite an expert and then people will just throw it right back in your face like, oh yeah, this discredited expert who was just stripped of their license.
Yeah.
I
I just linked it in the chat between us. Is Dr. Patrick Phillips.
Okay. So there it is, folks. So if you want to check that out, March 16th, 2023, Truro, Nova Scotia, Dr. Patrick Phillips over on the NCI webpage. Definitely a fabulous resource to anybody who's going to be pushing back against these things. And that was something, I guess we could talk about that for a second, because the NCI has concluded and produced their report. And a lot of what I see online is, people saying, okay, what are you going to do with this report now? What do you have to say about that, Chet? I know what I think.
A lot of people go, well, people don't realize the NCI doesn't have any teeth.
Right.
It's, but we do. That's the thing.
Oh, exactly.
I like the way Alex Cabana put it when he and I spoke about it a number of months ago. Is the purpose of the NCI was to build the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
So there's all the information, and this is all done in a professional manner. And you can send one person. You can send it to, like, if people want to learn more, they only have to go to one place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all sworn testimony. This is a document, and like hearings and stuff that, like it's public record now. It's a record of what happened. And the thing that people need to remember, it's in the name. It's the National Citizens Inquiry, which means it's inquiring to investigate what happened. And that's what that was its purpose, is to show you what happened. And now we take that information and we move forward with it. Like the NCI, the first phase of the NCI is complete, and that's that report. There is going to be more things happening with the NCI going forward. I'm not in charge of any of that stuff, but like Ken Drysdale and the other commissioners have talked about, like how they're going to be working alongside, helping with like legal teams and stuff, because the first thing we need to do is we need to identify what happened, what went wrong, who was harmed, and who is responsible for doing this. And this sets you up for that. This is step one in a long process. It's an unreasonable thing to expect the NCI to go and, it's like, oh, well, the NCI's done, now they're gonna hold everybody accountable. It's like, well, no, we don't. It's a collection of witnesses. It's sworn testimony. It's a public record.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And I always saw that as being the purpose too. It's to provide all that sworn testimony so that citizens themselves who want to fight back against this kind of thing can go into the courts and say, here is the sworn testimony, here is the evidence, it's already done. And that's what is going to provide weight to whatever case you want to bring against various government bodies, employers, so on and so forth.
I'm going to share with you another thing that I forgot to mention. So this is the citizens hearing. This happened the summer before, and this was set up by David Ross and Preston Manning, and this is the precursor to the NCI. It was 3 days of just testimony, learning what happened to people. Scarlett Martin, a friend of mine who's a paramedic, an ACP in Toronto, testified there, among many people who were injured or were discriminated against. One such fella was severely vaccine injured and donated to the convoy, and had his bank account frozen and all this stuff. And he just said because he couldn't get any doctors to listen to him, any public officials, and he saw that the convoy, because he couldn't go because he was so sick, but he's like, the convoy is the only way that I can get some leverage here to get some people to listen, to know what's happened to us. There's Scarlett's story is pretty wild.
Okay, right on. What are the highlights, I guess, of Scarlett's story here?
So Scarlett is an ACP in Toronto, and when the vaccines rolled out, she didn't say no. She asked for the safety information because she wanted to know what they wanted her to take. She's like, I don't know anything about this, like what it is, like an mRNA vaccine, like what's the risk, what's the side effects, and she submitted a letter requesting these things, and then she was fired for insubordination. They took her badge and her keys to the base and the truck, and they the management went on either side of her and perp walked her out of the base.
Wow. As
if she were a criminal. And yeah. She's an amazing paramedic, and she's been a medic for over 20 years. And it's like these are the exact people that you want to keep. It's and she testified at the NCI too. She talks about being fired in this testimony, but in her NCI testimony, which I can grab for you here in a second.
Sure thing.
She talks about her experience working during COVID. In particular, she talks about a guy who jumped out of an 8-story building that they labeled a COVID death and made them go into quarantine because, they showed up and said, yeah, he's dead. He's soup on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's fantastic. She's since been able to get her job back. She's been working, doing some legal stuff against the government in Ontario and stuff, and what they did to people. And she is one of the key organizers too.
And the situation that you were just describing there was one in which somebody had actually jumped off a building in an effort to commit suicide, successful effort at that.
Yep.
And that was about to go down as a COVID death until she intervened. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, no. So they responded as a second crew to the suicide jumper, because they called it. They send, when you have something like that, I've responded to those calls, you kind of send quite a few in case if they're injured. I've transported a suicide jumper, and you need lots of people to manage that. And so, but they got there and he was, soup, because you don't survive that typically.
Of course. Yeah.
She would later get she got a call from supervisors or whatever later, telling her that yeah, you and your partner need to go into quarantine because you guys were on a COVID call earlier, and so you need to isolate. And she goes, well, what call was it? It's it was the call that you attended with the other crew on whatever street. She goes, the dude who jumped out of the 8-story building? They're like, yeah, well, they swabbed him for COVID and he turned up positive. She's like, how did they swab him, with a mop? He's all over the place. We didn't even touch him. We just showed him and gross. And then we left.
Yeah. That's incredible. That is incredible. But that was the case. I think Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan show once put it as, if you get eaten by a shark and your arm tests positive for COVID, then it's going down as a COVID death. And that was, I think, part of the great fraud that's been perpetrated on us. In effort to make money off of these vaccines.
Yeah.
Pretty sick stuff. And there was a couple other things that you touched on there too, that I said, I can relate, because I got released from the military in September of 2021, medically, that is, primarily due to my failing mental health. And so I'm basically in the same boat. And it was I was released in September. I took my possession of my retirement home here in Sydney, Nova Scotia, on the 1st of November, 2021, and that was the same day that the vaccine passport came into effect. So I was barred from the Legion, barred from the gyms, all of the stuff that I really needed to do in order to facilitate my recovery. And good luck getting access to services. Even things like service dog training were closed down due to COVID, because apparently dogs spread COVID or whatever. And so that ends up kind of prolonging your recovery. I know I still don't feel the same, but I'm just trying to power through this thing. And I know that you mentioned that as well. So they actually implemented the policies that ended up prolonging your recovery, and then you actually ended up getting fired for taking too long to recover. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and I'm like still like, even if I say I was gonna go back to work tomorrow, I'm still barred from returning to work because I'm under vaccinated.
Yeah.
So like it's like, even if like I got like treated for PTSD and stuff and was able to go back to work, like because I was this close, I was barred from returning to work anyway. Excuse me, because you need to have 2 shots. I only have 1. I was denied medical exemption, and like everything they did to like anyone that they did to you, like they barred you from everything. They did it to me too after they poisoned me.
Yeah.
I like when I went to try to pick up my blood work at the hospital, try to figure out what the hell was going on. Like I knew what was going on, but to get evidence of what was going on, I wasn't allowed in. I had to sit there, like I sat there and explained over and over again. It's like, look, I potentially have a heart condition due to these, due to the vaccine. That's why I haven't gotten one. I just have to walk down the hallway about 20 feet, take a right, and it's like the second door on the right there, and I can pick up my paperwork, and then I'll leave. Excuse me. It's just a whole thing. One of my best friends died of cancer during COVID.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, like he got like turbo cancer. So
yeah,
he was
and there's like that twofold impact as well, where it's like the spike protein causes your immune system to turn on itself, while there's that SV40 sequence that is cancer promoting enhancing as well.
Yeah, because he beat cancer when we were in university together years and years ago, and he exploded full of cancer after those things, and I wasn't even allowed to go visit him. His mom and dad weren't even allowed in, like at times. Like they were only allowed to send one person in, so they chose his dad because his dad already had COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like how is this acceptable? Like we have all the stuff that we need to do to like put someone in an isolation room and stuff, and like you can wear proper PPE, and like those isolation rooms are geared to like suck everything out of the air and stuff, and there's like really good filters and stuff in there, and it's like we have everything we need to do this. You just like, this is just cruel.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes.
What do people need in palliative care, or when they're really, really sick? More than anything, they need their family.
Mm-hmm.
They need people to care about them, and that's the number one thing that they were denied, and it's egregious and it's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. And as Seneca said, all cruelty springs from weakness. And speaking of weakness, this looks like this is a crisis that's really been mounting for quite a while. This is a CBC article that Chet shared a whole bunch of great resources here with me. So, but this is a CBC article that is from February 12th, 2019, that says 1 year into code critical campaign, Nova Scotia paramedics union say nothing has changed. Something tragic is going to happen if ambulance availability issues aren't fixed, warns union official. So you guys were already kind of in an attrition crisis, not unlike Canada's military, well before anything like COVID-19, before there was a whiff of anything around that. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'll explain what code critical it means. Code critical means that you're down to no ambulances or only one, and that one is in Halifax.
Wow.
So there's a certain spot. If you're in Halifax and you see an ambulance parked at a certain spot, that's the only ambulance for a very long time. Things were bad when I was at work.
Now,
we were very busy, and a lot of people went off work due to stress leave. Like I went off stress leave, and a lot of my partners are gone now, and just being treated like dirt, man. And what, like, I'll tell you some things when the show's over, because I don't think I'm allowed to tell you, because I'll probably get in trouble with like my former employer if I say them live.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something afterwards, just to put this into perspective, something that happened. But things were rough beforehand. Like we had staffing shortages, like trucks were shutting down because like they weren't able to call people in, or they wouldn't call people in some cases. Like the union was blowing the whistle, and it just, nobody was listening. And it got worse during COVID. Like I know, so I'm from Antigonish, which is just like on the border of mainland Nova Scotia and Cape Breton, just before you get to the causeway. Mm-hmm. And like my friends of mine would tell me, it's like, yeah, man, like we'll log on sometimes, and you log into the computer and you go, hey, truck 60 logging in, and they go, okay, we're dropping a call on you. It's on 123 Roby Street in Halifax for a fall complaint. Code 1 license sirens. And so they would leave from Antigonish, get out on the highway, and they would start going license sirens to Halifax, which is like 2 hours and 20 minutes away.
I was just going to say, 2.5.
Yeah. And they'd often get to either like Milford, or the airport before it would get reassigned. So that's, like an hour and 45 minutes to like 2 hours of response time to a call before it gets reassigned to someone else. Is that every call? No, but it's happened enough times. And there's, I shared you some articles of examples that have made the news where things didn't go very well. And it seems to be happening more and more and more, because the attrition rate right now is staggering.
Yeah. Is this the kind of thing that you're talking about here? It's another CBC article. It says ambulance, I think that means New Brunswick, paid millions to hit targets biased against rural areas, auditor fines. Medivi's contract with government distorts wait times, Auditor General Kim Ader McPherson contends. So
the Auditor General went through the ambulance service in Nova Scotia too, and there's an article in that file that I sent you somewhere with regards to that. But in this particular case, so in the Maritimes, Nova Scotia runs a provincial service, and New Brunswick runs a provincial service, as does PEI. And so like I just know where I park my car over the day, and like I've logged in Antigonish and worked in Peggy's Cove that day, because just the way things go, you land there. But so all of the services have a contract where it's like you have to meet a response time of a certain within a certain window, otherwise they get fined. And so that's one of the things they talk about. So in typical, most like kind of like populated areas, I think it's around 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. I forget the exact number, but it's usually around 20 minutes. If they blow the 20-minute response time, they get fined. But in that particular article, one of the things that happened in Ambulance New Brunswick is they ran the service at 75% staffing. And so there was an extra $8 million allotted for wages that they were given as part of their contract to run the ambulance service. They didn't, hire anybody or pay anybody those wages, and they just kind of went into a slush fund. And so they're still getting the same amount of money to run the service and for these wages, but they're not getting penalized for not running it at full staff, and they still get the same money. And so whatever it is, but they had the change that's left over, they just got to keep. And did whatever the hell and it just kind of went away. And the Auditor General said, this is what the hell's going on here. And it was just, with in Nova Scotia was the Auditor General. It's like, why is nobody being held accountable? You guys are missing your contract response times time and time again, and the company hasn't been fined in years.
Right. And lack of accountability, I think, is a theme that we can see across the board.
Certainly.
And here's an article from this is August 12th, 2020, and it says Nova Scotia paramedics get new contract 5 years after old deal ran out. Deal, which goes until 2023, finalized following an arbiter's award. So, I mean, I think the common theme across the board is this is a leadership crisis, a management crisis. And that's something that we've been seeing in Canada's military for a number of decades now. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, brother?
Yeah, and so I started back in 2011, 2012-ish. Like, I was a student in 2011, and I got hired in 2012, and like, we voted to go on strike in 2013 because we had been without a contract, like a collective agreement for, like 3 years at that point. Mm-hmm. And like, we voted to strike, and then at like the 11th hour, the Liberal government at the time, Steve McNeil, was the premier, took away our right to strike, forced us back to work, forced us into arbitration, and forced us to take the contract. And the way that, because we were owed back pay, and the way that they set up the back pay, like because you get like so much of a wage increase, it was like the years that we got back pay, it was like 0%, 0%, like 2%. So they completely forced us in and screwed us out of our back pay. When we were going to go on strike, what we had agreed to was, we're going to do 911 calls, mm-hmm. and we're going to do emergency transfers. So if like hospital A needs to send somebody to Halifax for an emergency surgery or something, we will still do that. But we weren't going to do any of like the non-emergent stuff. Like, it's like, drive Grandma Jean from hospital A 2 communities over so the doctor can, take an x-ray and go, yeah, it looks like your hip healed, and send us back. It's complete. Like, we weren't going to do those things. But that's where they make their money, right? They make the most money doing that stuff. And so they, forced us back to work and took away our right to strike. And then each year, like as you saw in the previous contract, it went 5 years without being rectified. Wow. We did just get a new contract that was signed in time, and there was we actually got a pretty decent win. Like, if I was at work and had everything gone according to plan, and I hadn't ended up going off work, and school didn't go sideways and stuff on me, like, I'd be getting like a $10 raise right now. But like, there's some things that have happened since we've gotten all those. That's that big win, because our like, good job, Union, you did a great job. Like, we got like, that's a huge, like, $10 raise. That's awesome. Plus there's like retention bonus and stuff. Like, you did a good job. But there's other things afoot.
Yeah. Speaking of other things that may be afoot, especially as it pertains to the leadership / management crisis that's been mounting for a number of years now, that basically culminated, I think, in 2020 with the so-called COVID crisis. Here's another theme that we can relate to the military experience that seems to be common between these professions. Here's a CBC article that says, former paramedic suing Nova Scotia ambulance operator. Woman alleges supervisor sexually harassed and assaulted her at Shetty Camp Station. And here's a quote from lower down in the article. It says, to ask a young female, that is the right one. It's to ask a young female to start at the start of a career to come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct by an established supervisor is very difficult. And we just saw this whole sexual misconduct scandal, as the CBC put it, reach the highest levels of the military. I say it's been the same guys all along. It's the boomer generation. It's been that way since the late 80s, early 90s. And all that really happened is that they got older and kept moving up. But anyway, is this something that you guys have seen, has been a bit of a prolific problem within the profession as well?
Yeah. And there's certainly significant bullying from management in some cases. Yep. I'm not gonna say any names here, but
No, don't get yourself in trouble.
My PTSD comes from the way I was treated after, what happened with my issues at school, being injured in school, and doing some rough calls, and there was a particularly bad call in this area where two medics were in pretty rough shape after it, and you and I talked about it the other day, and
Yeah.
so you know which one I'm talking about, and they were just belittled and told if you take any time off you're gonna be fired, so they quit. After my last call, because I went off on stress leave after a call because I was up to here in stress going into a call, and it's not the call that bothers me now, it's the way they treated us. But I asked, because we had equipment failures. It was a pediatric cardiac arrest. It was a teenage girl died. I mentioned earlier the failed heart valve thing.
Yeah.
It's a cardiac arrest, and it was pretty rough, and my partner wasn't in good shape, and we had the defibrillator that the fire department had failed. Our suction unit battery quit really early, which we needed. But we did it went as smooth as it could go. And afterwards I just said, we need to debrief after this. And I was told, no, we're not giving you one. The fire department did one. It's well, I don't live there and I'm not on that fire department. So, and there's actually at the NCI, when I was there with one of the volunteers, their girlfriend is a paramedic who went off on stress leave, and they went off on stress leave because a member of management targeted them and harassed them to the point where they could no longer work. After they did any rough calls, this particular member of management would just belittle them and just come down on them and just harass them. And it's time and time again it happens. And there's a lot of instances of it. I ran into a colleague of mine, two of them actually, at Canadian Tire a number of weeks ago, and they'd asked hey man, what happened to you? You disappeared? Did you take a job in the city or something? We haven't seen you in a while. And gave them the Coles Notes version, and their response was those rotten fuckers is what they said. And then they explained what happened to one of them recently. Unfortunately a pediatric cardiac arrest, so they had a kid die on them on a call, and they just said that they were fine. They processed it, but they just said, hey look, I'm just going to take a couple days off, just to take some time off, spend some time with my kids, decompress, and work through it, right? And the response they got from management was, no, we can't let you do that. We'll come down there and we'll buy you a coffee and we can talk about it, but we can't let you take any time off. And he's wow. to hell with that. Fuck you, I'm taking the days off. But there's all these, they talk big, there's this return to mental readiness program that they,
it's the same thing in the military.
Yeah, and it's just oh, we're gonna do all this stuff to help people, and when the time comes, they just tell you to go pound sand and go fuck yourself.
It's all surface level optics, in my experience. They have all they say all the right things publicly, and they produce all these great programs, but where the rubber meets the road, all of that gets cast aside, and it's really just whatever the ambitions of the people in charge are at any given moment in time, they take precedence. So
and I don't want to paint management with all one brushstroke, because there are some guys that are great. When I was a student, I went to one of my first calls was a suicide, where a guy shot himself in the head, and the supervisor that showed up on that call to talk to me afterwards. And this is when I'm brand not even a paramedic yet, just a student. He was awesome. He's still awesome. He's one of the guys in Halifax. He's awesome. One of the guys in my area region, amazing. Took when would do anything for you. He was there to support the guys. But the thing is it's some of the people that are around him.
So the support is not there. And there's just so many parallels I can draw with the military experience as well. And I've just kind of been gaining a better appreciation for the kind of like the mental health crisis that we have in the military, just through my own experience, of course. And speaking with a lot of other veterans and, relying on my own experience, it does seem to be the case to me, at least, that a central feature of PTSD is the betrayal. It's like you're told, you have all of these great programs that look awesome on paper, and all the right things are being said publicly and at the town halls and things like that. But when the rubber meets the road, and you actually do, burn out due to operational stress, and you go to access the help, it's like you find out that you're just kind of a disposable resource. So there's this betrayal element to it, at least in my own experience. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we describe ourselves as the meat in the seat.
Oh, God.
That's
Inhumane. Yeah, it's inhumane.
That's all you are in the ambulance. Is they put two people in it and you're just the meat in the seat. Doesn't matter how many years you work, doesn't matter what you need. They don't care. We talked about this before the show, the counselor that I work with now, that's been very helpful, describes PTSD as like PTSD doesn't come from the trauma, because humans are very resourceful. They can work through almost anything. It comes from the shame and the abuse that comes after the trauma.
Right. That I believe, I definitely concur with that. And that is probably another feature of PTSD, is that kind of toxic shame and just irrational guilt, those kinds of things. Yeah, because the point that I went off work, and they've talked about this in like my file and stuff, and everyone that's helped me with on my journey through this, is the moment that, because I was in rough shape when I came back from school because of things that happened there, and then the way I was treated trying to come back to work and not being allowed to work. And it's a whole story that we don't have time for today. But the point that set me off and kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back is when I said, we need to debrief after this call. My partner's not okay, and we had things go wrong. And the answer I got was no. And then that's what tipped me over. Good Lord. So and it's the same for a lot of guys, right? Just like the way some people have been treated. And again, I'm not going to use anyone's name, but one of the guys I worked with, he was an advanced care paramedic and was at a area where I think he was the only advanced care paramedic. Everybody else was a primary care paramedic. It's just, for those who don't know, we have several layers of training. PCPs, or primary care paramedics, are level 1. ACPs are level 3. Level 2 is kind of doesn't exist anymore. It's just a grandfather thing. But there's a significant amount of training. But anyways, he wanted to get time off to go to his sister's wedding, and so he put in a shift request. He's like, I'm going to trade shifts with Bob, and they submitted the request, and management denied it. They're like, yeah, we can't let you trade shifts. And he goes, well, what am I supposed to do now? It's my sister's wedding. And he's like, I can't call in sick now because you'll just suspend me. Yeah. It's either that or I miss my sister's wedding. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, all right, here's option 3. I quit. And he walked out the door and never came back. Yeah. I mean, there you go. You had a base that had 1 ACP. Now it's doesn't have any, and it's short a paramedic. It's like, yeah. And meanwhile, we have stories like this popping up. This is from March 31st, 2021, Salt Wire. It's a Nova Scotia publication. And they say, what is taking them so long? Halifax man dies in wife's arms waiting for ambulance. So these are the real world ramifications of this kind of petty and cruel mismanagement. Yeah, so it puts us all in danger, right? Yeah. So as I said, there's a tremendous staff shortage. There's a Saltwire article that we should pull up after. Sure. That actually gives you numbers from the union. But what happened in that case, for those who know Halifax, it was in it. I'm not saying anything that's confidential because it's public, because it's in that article. It's down near the Armdale Rotary.
I'm sure you know what that is, Jeff. Just in Halifax, just
Mm-hmm.
down near like the Halifax Shopping Center. It was there is where the call was, which is about 5-10 minutes from the QE2, which is the main hospital in Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
At 5-10 minutes, depending on how bad traffic is. A gentleman was having a heart attack, and it took over 40 minutes for an ambulance to get there because there wasn't one available. I believe it had to come from out of town. I could have that incorrect, but by the time they got there, he was in cardiac arrest, and they weren't able to resuscitate him when he was only a few minutes from hospital. And there's been other instances where there was one not too long ago where they waited for an ambulance somewhere in Halifax, and it responded. It took 3 hours, and it came from like Amherst to get, and it was an Amherst crew that responded all the way from Amherst to Halifax. It was about like a 3-hour drive.
And just for out of province listeners, what is the driving time between Amherst and Halifax?
It's like probably like 2-3 hours, like at least. I think it's ridiculous. Like we've had guys from our base get to Halifax for calls, and that's like over a 2-hour drive. Like it's absolutely unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Just incredible. And I think this might be the article that you were just referencing there. It says it just continues to spiral. Nova Scotia paramedics leaving jobs in record numbers.
Yeah. I have a Saltwire account. I can log into it, and I can bring it up if you want me to, because so you can actually see the numbers. Just link it in the chat with me, just so I can grab the link quick, and then I'll pull it up for you.
Yeah, you should be able to just do like a present from your end there, and then I have to allow it, but we'll get it up there somehow. Yeah, I don't have a Saltwire account, guys, so pardon me, but
I got it right here.
I have some backup here. We have a very capable guest with us here today, so good thing for me. And Stephanie McAvoy was just saying NCI is having meetings now and asking for volunteers to help. We need all kinds of people to meet with politicians and officials, people to monitor committee meetings, etc. So just for everyone's awareness, this is an all hands on deck situation, I think. So, we'll definitely put that out there, especially to the veteran community. And I am interested in participating this time around. It's one of the things I've been kicking myself about for a while, is that I didn't really dive into the NCI while it was going on. It just feels like I'm juggling so many things, and I'm not quite as adept at sort of organizing myself as I used to be since my medical release. So
yeah, I feel you. It's a lot to take in. It's 24 days of like 8 to 12 hours each day. It's a lot to take in. It's like I followed it pretty extensively because, well, I was part of it and I was there, and I haven't even seen probably like 25% of it. It's just it's overwhelming. If you want to watch any testimony, the first one I would watch is Sheila Lewis. She's the lady who was denied medical transplant.
I interviewed her, Sheila Lewis.
Yeah.
She's the double lung transplant patient from Alberta who was denied access to services by her physicians, quote unquote, on the basis of her vaccine status. And she appealed all the way to, I think it was the Alberta Supreme Court. No, it was the Supreme Court of Canada. She went to, they dismissed it as moot, and charged her costs. She had to pay court costs for fighting for her life in Canadian courts. So you want to talk about petulant and cruel and inhumane. That's about as sick as it gets. There was also the case of Garnet Harper in Quebec. There,
he needed I think he needed a kidney or something.
Yeah, he needed a kidney, and they wouldn't do it for him, so they orphaned his 5 kids to teach him a lesson for not getting vaccinated. I guess just petulant and cruel. And
I got that thing there.
Okay. I think you can hit present from your side there, and
yeah, I did. I hit share screen. So
okay, you got that. Oh yeah, I see it there now. Okay. And Stephanie is also saying, if you want to be involved in the NCI Stage 2, please send me a PM here on Facebook. We need all kinds of people, even if you want to work behind the scenes. I'm game. I'm game.
I highly encourage people to do so. It's one of the greatest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
It was an honor to be asked to help do it. So.
Yeah. And I will be availing myself of that opportunity. I want a piece of that action this time around. Okay. So here is the Saltwire article with a proper account.
Yeah.
By all means, walk us through it there, Chet.
So we'll hear, this is the big thing that we need to look at. So this is the graph showing the number of people that have left. The purple one is the total number. Mm-hmm. So 2017, we had 54, 41. And then 2019 is 55, and you can see it keeps goes up. 73, 125, and 133. So what's that equal? 133.
Those are people leaving? That's attrition?
Yeah. So this is people who have left and haven't retired.
Prior to retirement, they're leaving. They're quitting or being medically discharged?
Medically discharged, injured, that sort of thing. Or they're dead. Wow, that's the other thing. So when I was at the NCI, and I know I mentioned, and there's no, I don't have an official number on this, so take this with what you will. When I was speaking to a colleague's partner, like romantic partner, not like work partner, like their girlfriend is a paramedic, was telling me that in the year of 2022 to 2023, I think that's right. Yeah, the 12 months leading up to when we were at the NCI, 12 paramedics died in Nova Scotia. And normally we'll lose like one or two people. Like sometimes somebody gets cancer, or sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes we have someone kill themselves. Sometimes it was a car accident. But we had 12 people die. That's 1% of the workforce died. I know quite a few of them committed suicide, and a number of them had heart issues. Wow. Where they passed away in their sleep. I don't have any official numbers on that. It's just what I'm told. And there's a gentleman who I would hope that you would have on at some point to talk to. We're trying to get him on with Jason Levine as well. His name is Mark Long. He is a former RCMP officer and Halifax Regional Police officer. He started the clothing company Cracked Armor to bring awareness to PTSD and the struggles that veterans and first responders have with it. But he knows the numbers of how many people medics have committed suicide. And like myself, and he's made this public, so again, I'm not sharing anything that isn't publicly known. He too was injured by the vaccine, and so he's been very vocal about that as well. He's made the powers that be at Nova Scotia Health and EHS and Halifax Regional Police very they don't like him very much. He calls them out on their shit quite a bit.
Well, that's probably a testament to his own integrity.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's he and I met him at a PTSD conference down the valley just back in November there, and he and I were talking quite a bit, and in our, like, holy crap, we need to talk about all this stuff, and we forgot to give each other our phone numbers, naturally. But like he knows like Mike Rude, who does the Rude Awakening tour. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you might know who Mike is. Oh yeah, I spoke with Mike quite a bit that day too. He and Alex are going to be on with Jason talking about methloquine and those issues tomorrow, I think. Oh wow! Tomorrow, it's either tomorrow or Friday. But yeah, so keep an eye out for those guys. But yeah, so since the time I went off, ever since I had a concussion, I can't do mental math anymore. I'll add it up for you. So is it 55, 93, 25. So since I went off work up until the end of 2022, so a year ago, 386 paramedics left the workforce. not because they retired.
That is incredible.
Out of 1,200, and the last time I saw an official number, I think it came from the union. There was over 200 vacancies. I think it was 275, but I forget. I know it was over 200, less than 300 vacancies on the trucks. So like over the course of a week, like all the shifts, there's 200 and some spots that aren't filled. So you don't have an ambulance there. So if the crew are abandoning the ship and the ship's sinking, who's the first person you should probably go look at?
Yeah, exactly. The captain. That's
Captain.
I was an electronics technician in the military, and when I see the same fault across multiple subsystems, I look for the common point. That's the boomer generation. So, Colleen is asking, Chet, are you on the Jason relay across Canada tonight?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, right on. Very active, and like we appreciate your continued service to Canada and Nova Scotia in particular, bro.
When I became a paramedic, the very first thing they teach you is, like, you're a first responder, you're a medical professional, but above all things, you're a patient advocate.
Yeah.
And they can take my job, they can prevent me from working, but at no point have I ever stopped being a paramedic, because I've tried to be a patient advocate from the get-go of this, trying to advocate for like how we can actually help the people who did actually get sick, because some people did, and like like proper treatments and stuff, and proper protocols, like treat these people with respect, treat them early. But like, again, like with this, like this is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to know what's happening, because we need to, again, this is harming the people in your community and they deserve better. So we need to advocate for them to make change here.
Yeah, I can relate to so much of what you're saying too. That was part of that irrational guilt, I think, that I felt with even like leaving the military, and intellectually accepting that it was just my time to go. But at the same time, I can't help but feel a sense of duty to the people that are left there, because that was what I spent a lot of my late career doing. Just at the rank that I was at, was sort of shielding all of the younger folks coming in behind me from a lot of the persecution of the upper management, a lot of this cruelty and petulance that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The
way I look at it is, in a way, like, PTSD diagnosis took me off at when you mentioned at the start of the show that I'm retired, it's like my hope is that I hope that that's only temporarily. I want to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, the way I see it is, I'm the one sitting in the lifeboat watching the ship go down.
Mm-hmm.
And my duty right now is, because I can't get near the boat, because I get too close to the boat, they're going to start shooting at me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know who's at the helm, and
Mm-hmm.
is to shoot the flares off and call for help, because the people that are at the helm aren't calling for help, so someone has to.
No,
people need to know what's happened,
and they won't, because I think another theme that we've kind of touched on here is this obsession with optics, and so they're never going to admit that they're having any issues there. It's kind of everybody else's fault, It's it's all people in the lower ranks.
There's a lot of when the guys, like, who are having a hard time, when they abuse them and like throw them under the bus and stuff, like the guys who are struggling, the common theme is like, oh well, they did it to themselves. It's like, no, they didn't. You did it to them, and they were asking for help, and it was clear they needed help. They needed a break. It's your response. It's like our responsibility, like as like a community, as like first responders and stuff, especially like if you're leading, is to take care of them, to make sure that they got the resources they need so they can continue doing this. So like, not just so they can get back to work, so they can get back to their friends and family. because like PTSD can wreck a person. Like mine's pretty well under control. Like I'm doing very, very well for certain things that cause trouble, but like I know guys that are in far worse shape than me, and they just can't get any help, and it's egregious. And they didn't do it themselves. They signed up to help people, not to be abused.
Yeah, they've had this inflicted on them.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. And some of the, I think the issues you were just touching on there is this kind of repurposing of resources. So, and the lowering of standards. And we have the CTV News here says, fire department called to assist a dying patient in Nova Scotia hospital with no doctor. So I think that is something to, here's a quote. It says, our fire department was informed there was no doctor on site, nor was there one on call, he wrote. Adding that a doctor was en route to the hospital. So it's the paramedics, it's the doctors, basically all of our emergency services across the board, slow collapse. And this is the kind of stuff that like puts us all at risk. And when it comes to the fire departments, I mean, is that normal to get the fire department to stand in for emergency EMTs and paramedics, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So a few things there. So in that case, that is the fire department responding to the emergency room to run a cardiac arrest.
Oh, God.
Yes, that's at Soldiers Memorial in Annapolis Valley. So that is unacceptable because there should be, a physician there to run the cardiac arrest. And like a physician isn't going to do anything different than like me and my partner would do, because we have the same training in that regard. Yeah. Like we have advanced care, life support. So I could go into that, but something to bear in mind. So when we'll use a cardiac arrest as an example. Often the fire department will be dispatched because, especially in more rural areas, because they're probably closer than we are. We tend to be based in town where you have, volunteer fire departments all over the place. Right. Mm-hmm. And so they would, in those cases, they would often dispatch them. They would send them in town too, because to run a cardiac arrest is it takes a lot of hands, right? And a lot of those guys are trained as MFRs, mm-hmm. and quite a few, especially like in my area, and like a lot of the guys on the fire departments are paramedics too. So you're getting good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it's all reminiscent of a story that I was showing on a previous podcast at some point where, somebody died on the emergency room floor in a Nova Scotia hospital because there was nobody available at the hospital to administer CPR. And my take on it at the time was like, you shouldn't be allowed to push a mop in a hospital unless you know CPR. I mean, that seems like a basic job requirement.
It's CPR is a monkey skill. I don't think that. Like it's pretty easy. Like here's a secret. When I do cardiac arrests, I don't do CPR because I have other things I need to do. Like I need to run the heart monitor and the defibrillator. I need to run, like, set up like the IV lines, get the help my partner and I will get the cardiac medications ready, and like set up things for like intubation and stuff. Like, then that's where the firefighters are great. Those, and especially with our new like defibs that have like a coaching system that help you, like, mm-hmm. It's almost like playing Guitar Hero back in the day. Like it gives you like direct feedback, and like there's like it like on like how deep if you're going, and because like it's really neat. But like having the fire guys show up is common, especially in rural areas, to get things going, and it's great. The fire guys are great. I'm never gonna shit on the fire department. Those guys are awesome. But they're there to support of us. But the big issue in that case down in the valley is they had to respond to the emergency room. Like that's obscene. Like they're like was there not nurses there who could have at least initiated the cardiac arrest? Because like there's going to be a crash cart there that's going to have everything there. Like it's egregious. And I sent you another article. Like one of the doctors that was fired in Nova Scotia was the emergency room physician from that hospital.
That wasn't Chris Milburn, was it?
No, he was. He was fired from
Cape Breton Regional.
Cape Breton Regional. This was a Soldiers Memorial, and
Okay.
but it's one of the ones I sent you.
Okay. One sec. I'll see if I can dig it up. Chet sent me a lot of articles. He's very he's way down this rabbit hole and a very knowledgeable, resourceful guy. So,
oh, here, I'll pull it up.
Thanks, bro.
Because it's a Saltwire one, so I have that account. So.
That's right. Yeah, I should probably get on that. Get a Saltwire account. Truth is, I just don't show that many other articles.
Yeah. I got it because they covered a lot of stuff that focuses on here lately, and because I'm on Jason's show every week. So, shunned unvaccinated doctor says he might have saved Middleton Hospital heart attack victim. This is back on June 30th, 2023. His name has been kept out, but he's been off work for a year and a half, and this emergency room is shutting down because they have no staff, and it's just he's still not allowed to work.
Due to his vaccination status.
Due to his vaccination status.
And that is something that we see with the nursing profession as well, where, you know, they fired all the nurses for not participating in the gene therapy experiment, and they're still off now. And they're not allowing them. Not only are they not allowing them to come back to work, but they're bringing in nurses from a refugee camp in Kenya, apparently, and providing them with their accommodation. So that's like an additional fiduciary benefit that they're getting over and above what Nova Scotia nurses would have gotten had they been hired here locally. And the quality of care doesn't really seem to factor into it. Like for decades, it's been the case that qualified immigrants who come to Canada are faced with these standards boards who won't recognize their qualifications from overseas. Doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a dentist, and that's been kind of a barrier to this importation of skills for decades now. But all of a sudden, all of that stuff has just kind of gone by the wayside, and we are draining resources from a refugee camp in Kenya
which on its face doesn't sound appropriate to do.
No, right off the bat.
I know it's in one of the articles I sent you, like they're even not supposed to do that because it's like part of policy with like the World Health Organization. It's like, hey, you don't pull medical professionals from places that are like desperately in need of them in like the third world. Like what are you doing?
I know. I take that position as well, like sort of across the board. You know, we're bringing in a lot of, university students and qualified people like from India, for example. But India is still a developing country, so they can probably use a lot of smart people where they are to get them to the point where they are developed.
Yeah, because they're like, if you take all the good people out of a country, what do you have left?
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, we used to complain about it, back in the 90s. That was, they called it the brain drain, where the United States was draining a lot of our expertise for higher salaries and stuff like that. So to me, it seems to be the case that we should probably just put the incentives in place for people to stay in their home country of Canada, which I'm sure they would love to do. But instead of providing those incentives, we just brain drain the developing world.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of, and I'm sure we'll get to like the people who are put on leave, but like there's so many people here in like across the country in general, but like that were put on like pay without leave or leave without pay, and that have not been allowed to return to work and have been fired because they've been kept off for so long. Like there's that many people, plus there's more than that who left, who quit so that they couldn't fire them, so that they were to be able to, work somewhere else. Because like if it's on your files, like, oh, well, we fired so-and-so, well, it makes getting any other job more difficult, right? And so a lot of people, as opposed to, being put on like unpaid leave, just said, all right, I quit, I walk away. And like that goes back to and I don't know what everybody's decision was, but I showed you the numbers. It was like through the course of the pandemic up until the end of last year, 386 paramedics left the workforce.
Wow.
That didn't retire.
Right. And that's out of a total number of what is full strength for the paramedic profession in Nova Scotia?
About 1,200.
1,200. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're losing
25, 30%. Yeah, about a third of the workforce. We run about, I think it's 110, 120 trucks for the whole province. And so you shut down. So when you're missing a third of the workforce, you're shutting down a third of those trucks every day.
Right.
And then that puts more strain on every other truck, because I know a lot of friends of mine, like they've been really like, they used to love, like they love being a paramedic. They just hate working here now because so often you don't get your time off, you don't get vacation, like your vacation requests are all canceled. You're getting shift overrun, a lot of shifts. So normally you're scheduled for a 10-hour or a 12-hour shift, and you're getting off at 16 hours, and then you're in the next day. And like, it's just, they're not getting time. They can't spend time with their kids in the evening. It's just they're burnt out and they're tired, man. Like 16 hours is a long time to be on your feet in a truck, zipping around. And it some days can be a very, very stressful job. Like
we are feeling the brunt of that. I mean, the media is generally pretty quiet about that, but here's a video clip. Nova Scotia town in uproar over the death in the emergency room.
This is the one we just talked about, where the fire department had to respond.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what Globalist News has to say about this. I'm just gonna duck out of the video stream for a second here, folks, because Chet and I were chatting just prior to the live stream, and I forgot to let my puppy out before I started, which is part of the usual morning routine. But I will be right back.
I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna.
Okay. Quick break here, guys. We'll play the video, and we'll be right back with you.
I don't think that's satisfactory for us as Nova Scotians. I think as Nova Scotians, we deserve better, and I think we can do better.
Middleton Town Councillor Gary Marshall wants change, and he's not alone. The mayor of the Annapolis Valley community has also written to the premier after a death at Soldiers Memorial Hospital last week. The town says paramedics and volunteer firefighters were initially dispatched to the emergency department Thursday night. Marshall says they believe someone was in distress and didn't realize the ER was closed, but that wasn't the case. It was an admitted inpatient waiting for the on-call doctor to show up.
It is not uncommon for hospitals such as this in rural parts of Nova Scotia to rely on 911 for additional assistance as they need it.
Our emergency department has limited hours, and now our inpatients are relying on volunteer firefighters and paramedics to respond if they're in medical distress, such as a cardiac arrest.
Nova Scotia Health says staff did a great job and followed protocols.
The nursing staff that were there that night, they were able to provide chest compressions and treat the patient while they were waiting for the physician to arrive.
Unfortunately, the patient who was experiencing cardiac arrest died, and that leaves a bigger question about hospitals without a doctor on site.
I think we're very concerned about the state of Soldiers Memorial Hospital.
Marshall says he hasn't heard of a situation like this before and doesn't want it to happen again, and locals are on edge.
Well, they're understaffed and overworked. I think we need a better healthcare system. I think we need more nurses. We need more doctors. We need more paramedics.
In light of the most recent wildfires, that is extremely concerning because those services are being split into where the medical system should be carrying that in-house.
I don't feel safe at all. And my husband is in a situation where we need it when we need it. And right now we can't have that.
The town says 5 to 7 doctors would be needed to restore a 24/7 emergency department. The premier wasn't available for an interview Wednesday, but a community is wanting answers and a family is left grieving. Callum Smith, Global News, Middleton, Nova Scotia.
There you have it, folks. And Berthley Arsman is saying decentralized everything is the only way out. Expecting government agencies to help us out of this shitstorm is laughable. Yeah, I think that is. I'm a pretty reasonably strong proponent of maybe privatizing a lot of these resources, getting them out of the hands of government. You shouldn't give the resources you need to live to the same people who have the guns, namely the government. They have ultimate control, and there's really, if they don't want to provide you with recourse, an avenue for recourse, then you're kind of SOL. Any thoughts on that, Chet, on the decentralization of these, the management of these resources, at least?
Yeah, that might probably work. I don't know. I don't have any concrete answers for you. Well, it's better. It's better than who used to control the ambulance service. That's for sure, because it used to be the funeral home, and you used to get paid more to take them to the morgue.
Seems like a conflict of interest there.
Yeah, my uncle Dan used to be he was an ambulance driver back in the day, and that's why he did it for a little while. He's like, I can't do this. He's like, I took people that were warm to the morgue because that's how they made their money. And he's like, it disgusted me so much. So like, we've taken a step up, but
right. I guess I would still describe it as something like a monopoly.
Yeah. And I don't know if I know what the answer is, because like one of the things you need is good leadership first and foremost, because you've got a difficult. Yeah, there you go. It's not the system; it's the management. Exactly. It's not the ship. It's not the ship. It's the captain.
Right.
I won't say any names.
It's okay, man. We're not asking you to.
But there's and that's the thing. You've got a system that's under tremendous strain, due to like years and years of mismanagement, and just like it's not just like EHS is one thing, but then there's like it's the mismanagement of like Nova Scotia Health and all the hospitals being overrun, and then just the insanity with COVID and firing so many people and like pushing people out of the workforce. Like it all compounds together, right? It's all one big pile of shit. There's a great video of Sean Fraser just talking about, it's like, gee, we're in the midst of a healthcare crisis and we're short on doctors. And like, gee, I wonder why that is, Fraser. Because you fired everybody in the midst of a healthcare crisis. Like the system was struggling before COVID, and then like the way things COVID handled was just like, it's like on the verge of breaking and you just jumped on it. Like it's fuck.
And I remember like one example that comes to mind was the firing of for all the same reasons, the vaccine mandate and all this stuff, the firing of all these healthcare professionals in Ontario, even after the citizens of Ontario gave their money to the province to purchase another 1,400 emergency beds, and then the next thing you know, they're reporting that they have all these shortages of beds. When in fact the physical beds themselves were still there the entire time, but they didn't have the people to staff those beds, and so then the unstaffed physical beds would be reported as no bed. And
because you need to have so many medical staff per patient. Like there has to be I'm not sure what the term is. It's like continuation of care or something to that extent.
Here is where we're headed nowadays. This is from September of 2023. This is a Globe and Fail article. They say Nova Scotia expands immigration program in bid to fill pharmacy and paramedic jobs. So I just mentioned the nurses a little while ago there, but that program is now being expanded to fill other vacancies within the healthcare system. And one has to wonder about, the standards, I guess, like I said, because for decades that has been the issue with getting qualified immigrants into Canadian positions. So
Yeah, they're not all, they're also not bringing in trained paramedics. They've
Okay.
expanded the I'm sure there might be the odd one there here and there, but they've expanded the number of campuses in Nova Scotia from 2 to 4 to mass train paramedics, and they're bringing people in to train them, and then there's a real push to try to have them stay because their tuition, it's around 50 to 60% of it will be covered through bursary. I guess it's a bursary, maybe. It's like $12,500 of it will be covered for people they bring in, and they fast track them to citizenship. It's funny because like a friend of mine is from England. He's been here for probably 20 years or more, and he's been a nurse for almost as long as I've been a paramedic. I think went to school around the same time, and he's not a citizen yet, and he's from the UK, and he's a trained nurse here for like been working for like 10 years or more. And yet why can't he get it?
And you got to love how the province is spinning this program itself. Changes help retain healthcare workers. So is this a retention initiative or a replacement initiative?
My gut would say that's an egregious typo. At least it should be. But yeah, I'm not allowed to go back to work. But we'll bring somebody else in. That sounds like replacement to me.
And all of those nut jobs out there talking about great replacement theory, I'm sure are vindicated by now, I would hope, just with the approach that everybody seems to be taking, at least the managerial class. And I guess there hasn't been any talk because Cindy is asking, how about hiring back all of those who got fired? FFS sickening. I don't think you've heard any rumblings of that, or have you?
Oh no, I shared with you the current vaccination policy for Nova Scotia. We can pull that up.
Okay, yeah, I'm just let me scroll for it here. Yeah.
Let's pull up the numbers of the people that were let go first. Oh no, that's the
okay.
That's the bursary program that lets you know how much. So that basically just says the people. And this is people from Nova Scotia too. So if you do go to become a paramedic in Nova Scotia now, there's a $12,500 bursary available if you stay in the province for 3 years, which is great. That's good news. I think the union actually won us that, which is that's a good piece of news. But it's the people, they're not looking for Nova Scotians. They're looking for.
Is it this one here?
No, we should talk about that one afterwards, though.
Okay. It's about this one.
Yeah, let's start with this one.
All right.
So the premier and the health minister would like to tell you that they only let go 100 people due to vaccine mandates, but you can see near the far on the right there, the number of people they put on leave was 963. It's a little more than 100. With EHS, which is Emergency Health Services, they only put 4 of us on leave, but I'm willing to bet that it's because a lot of people quit instead, because you saw the numbers of people who left the workforce. But like that's across all of Nova Scotia Health, 963 people placed on leave, and then there's probably a lot more than that said, "See ya. We're not doing this."
Right.
So the next one after this, I think, was the Nova Scotia Health Policy. That's the mandatory vaccination protocol. It's It's one of the websites that I sent you.
Okay, let me see if I can just scroll to it here. Here's
That's
the
the
policy.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her. So if you scroll down a little bit, I'll tell you when to stop.
Sure.
So it just talks about the mandatory policy. Here, actually, it might be easier because it's hard for me to see it.
Yeah, you can take over if you want, bro.
Yeah, if you want to just, well, let me pull up my email. I'll pull it up there. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's quite some interesting headings here, at least. Mandatory requirements for other team members, employees, on-site medical staff currently on another type of leave of absence, mandatory requirements. So if you're on a leave of absence, there's a mandatory requirement for you. Employees currently on unpaid administrative leave and on-site medical staff currently with suspended privileges due to not obtaining primary series COVID-19 immunization. Wow. So this is the kind of stuff.
It's pretty gross.
Oh, yeah. I know all about it. We've been talking about this stuff around here for, the entire time, basically, or at least as long as I've been out of the military.
There, if you want to let me share my screen, I can find it.
Yeah, you got it, brother.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so here we go. Right here. Employees and on-site medical staff currently on another type of leave or absence mandatory requirements. To return to work, employees, blah, 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 must submit following OHS 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. They have to show proof of immunization, right here, proof of immunization, a primary series of COVID-19 immunization or documentation of a medical exemption or an application for an exception based on another protected ground of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. So you are required to take 2 doses of the primary series of the vaccine, which is the one that came out in 2021, which is for a form of the virus that no longer exists, has been, sitting around for a long time, not stored at the appropriate temperature because nothing was. And at this point, is no longer approved for use. And even if you could find it, is expired. It's an expired medication. And all of this stays in effect until January 2027. So I am not allowed to work in this province for a minimum another 3 years before they'll reconsider.
Wow. And for what purpose?
For what purpose? And I'm going to show you how it is you get medical exemption, or what should be a medical exemption. I have it. This is one of the things I sent you. This one. There we go. So this is the one that you had up. So this is the COVID-19 mandatory vaccination protocol in high-risk settings, which is basically anything that's healthcare. It's unless you're working in a clinic or you're on the ambulance or you're a firefighter and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff and a bunch of jargon. And
actually, before we kind of dive into that, because you mentioned there were the exemptions that they mentioned there, perhaps for medical and for human rights purposes. Now, I actually filed a judicial review of the dismissal of my multiple human rights complaints to the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission with the courts. So that'll be coming up in a couple of months as well. And that was something, if I recall correctly, that happened during the pandemic. Did they even approve any exemptions? What's the track record like on that?
They did. I can find it. I actually have it somewhere.
That's what Susan was asking.
It's not many. I had it one sec because I think I.
And also, I got a couple of questions I'll throw up while you're digging that up. And Escargot is saying, where have all the hippies gone? Long time passing. Well, the hippies, who are also the cutthroat corporatist yuppies of the 1980s, are running our institutions right now. That's where they went. And that was what they said about them when they became the yuppies, is that they were a bunch of hypocrites. There was a bunch of magazine articles from the 1980s on that. And people were kind of going, well, hey, what's up with all this yuppieism there, boomers? I thought you guys were supposed to be hippies. And then Seinfeld came along in the 90s like, yeah, we're just liars. And then here's Berthley is saying, I have 5 children, all born at home, breastfed for at least 3 years each, slept with me every night, slept with me every single night. It's not easy to stay healthy, folks. It takes work. Most people want to press an easy button. We have never been to a doctor or hospital ever. Well, thank you very much for your service to humanity in doing that. That is another thing that I've been pointing out as well, is that you really got to breastfeed those babies. I mean, the boomer generation has the lowest rates of breastfeeding of any generation, thanks to that commie bastard, Dr. Benjamin Spock, who destroyed the West. Oh, sorry, Chet. You got your reference up there?
Oh yeah, I'll come to that in a second. I there was some exemptions, but it was like 10, something like that. It wasn't. It was like 10 people or something. They reported it on the Nova Scotia website at one point. I just can't find it right now, although I'll be looking for it forever.
Okay.
Let me get back to where I was. There we go. Okay, so this here is the the mandatory thing for high risk settings, and this details what classifies as a medical exemption. And so there's written proof of medical contradiction against receiving COVID-19's vaccine provided by either a physician or a nurse practitioner. A physician or nurse practitioner must complete a valid blah, blah, blah. Okay. The person cannot be vaccinated against COVID-19 based on one of the following valid medical contraindications: a history of severe allergic reaction, such as anaphylaxis, after previous administration of a COVID-19 vaccine using a similar platform, mRNA or viral vector, an allergy to any component of the specific COVID-19 vaccine or its container, polyethylene glycol, a history of major venous or arterial thrombosis or thrombocytopenia, that's blood clots, following vaccination, a history of capillary leak syndrome following vaccination. That's when your blood vessels basically dump all their fluid out and your blood pressure drops. A history of myocarditis and or pericarditis after the first dose of the mRNA COVID vaccine, or you've experienced a serious adverse event after receiving a first dose of COVID-19 vaccine. A serious adverse event is defined as life-threatening, requires inpatient hospitalization, or prolongs an existing hospitalization, results in persistent or significant disability, incapacity, or in a congenital anomaly, birth defect, and the affected time period for the medical. Oh, whatever. So, all of those things have two things in common. Do you know what they are?
Not seeing it.
The first one is they're all life-threatening.
Right.
The second is that they all require you to take it once.
Right. Wow.
So there is no medical exemption.
Effectively, yeah. There is no medical exemption from taking one shot.
Yeah. And they admit this can potentially kill you because myocarditis can kill you, blood clots can kill you, pericarditis can kill you, anaphylaxis can kill you.
Yeah. And this is where they go full Lord Farquaad. That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah.
Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. So it's And Marianne, I see your comment there. It says, Jeff, not every woman can breastfeed their babies and shouldn't be shamed for it. No, that certainly wasn't my intention with my comment there. Just that I wholeheartedly endorse the practice where it is available, as opposed to bottle fed. That's all.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for kids if you can do it.
Yep. 1000%. Yeah. And well, here we are faced with all of these self-inflicted self-inflicted wounds to our healthcare system. I mean, well, management / leadership inflicted, the captain inflicting the wound to his own ship. And speaking of that captain, here is Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia, and this is one of the things like that I find is just galling, where Nova Scotia had an election in the middle of the pandemic, changed parties, changed out the leadership, the political leadership as well, but the institutional leadership hasn't changed whatsoever. So Dr. Strang is still in his position today. And somebody was just kind of asking about his role in all of this. And what I can tell you is that there is another judicial review. I believe it was the Citizens Alliance of Nova Scotia who filed it. There's a judicial review of the COVID mandates put in place by Dr. Strang. And we saw, there was the incident there where they got a court injunction to shut down a protest against these mandates, even in the wake of allowing the Black Lives Matter protests to go ahead. That injunction, basically thwarted the efforts of all the good citizens trying to stand up for human rights. And they have appealed it, and the Nova Scotia Court of Appeals. I read the Nova Scotia Court of Appeals, like the government tried to stop it as moot, first of all, because they just go ahead and trample your rights. And when it gets into court, they say, well, we're not trampling your rights at this particular moment. That happened previously, but we're not doing it anymore, so it's moot. That's another tactic that we see across the board. And the Nova Scotia Court of Appeals, when they put Dr. Strang on the stand, like, it was a pretty scathing review of what he had to say, because he just got up there and said, that outdoor transmission can occur, but the justices in this case, in their commentary, were saying, well, like, at what rate is it occurring? What is the risk? There's a harm benefit ratio that needs to be weighed here. And he wasn't able to cite a single case of outdoor transmission. He didn't provide any clinical evidence to support his assessment. And he's acting as his own expert witness in a review of the policy that he implemented. So conflicts of interest abound, and there's a total lack of rationale across the board. But yet Tim Houston, who didn't fire that inept scumbag, Dr. Strang, he's here tweeting out, our government is recruiting and retaining more paramedics, expanding paramedic training across the province, providing a tuition rebate of $11,500 to paramedics who agree to work in the province for at least 3 years, adding a second air ambulance to handle routine transfers, allowing ground ambulances to stay in communities more often, and more. So this is... I think some shameless self-promoting and propagandistic, but go ahead.
I will say one thing: the 4 people in that picture are fantastic. I know all of them, so they are fantastic people. Mm-hmm. Especially the girl on the left, Jan Jensen. Like that's your top tier paramedic right there. She's unreal, amazing. She shows up at your door, you are in good hands. But they
all of the best Canadians have served. We'll say that.
And the fellow on the right there, Luke, went to school with me. He's another fantastic and fine fellow. And again, if any of those 4 individuals show up at your door on your worst day, you're in good hands. I will tell you that. Not so much the fellow who's talking about them, but who's posting, he's sharing their picture, but he says, like, oh yeah, we're expanding paramedic training across the province, and well, they've opened more campuses, but they're looking at replacing paramedic positions with emergency medical responders, which are like a very narrow scope of practice, and they can pay them a lot less, and it's like I'm sure we'll come to that. Like all those things are good, but the thing is you've run the thing into the ground. Like none of that addresses morale. None of that addresses the suicide crisis amongst paramedics in this province. Like none of it addresses the people who are leaving en masse. Like I mentioned how I met with a colleague a few weeks ago. We ran into each other at Canadian Tire, and I mentioned what we talked about, and he said that he was talking about a lot of the new hires that were coming on. He said people are lasting maybe a year before they say, you know, I'm done. I'm going to go take a job somewhere else, or I'm just going to walk away from the profession altogether. And a lot of my friends who are still at work, they say like they don't want to work there anymore. Like the only reason they do is because they've got nowhere else to go, and they've got kids to take care of. So if there was an option to leave, they would take it, but they're kind of stuck. And and that's mixed with like that sense of duty too to the community, where it's like, if I leave, like what's going to happen? Like, so.
Yeah. And so it's just a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, you know, without ever addressing the hazard in the first place, the root cause of the issue. And that's sort of just basic first aid as far as, well, I mean, like I was trained in first aid, obviously, when I was in the military, and that's the first thing you do is eliminate the hazard. Before.
Yeah, there's no point closing up the wound if you're still getting stabbed to death.
Exactly. And that is the same whether we're talking about combat first aid or basic first aid. You eliminate the threat in combat first aid, eliminate the hazard in your basic first aid. And they haven't, well, I mean, I think we could call it a threat safely at this point, haven't eliminated the threat, which is the upper management. So I don't really see that going anywhere productive. And is this the one that you were just mentioning here? It says new emergency medical responders will improve care. This is from January 2024, so just a few weeks ago.
This is just announced. So Michelle Thompson and the Premier announced that we are going to be training 200 emergency medical responders, which they say will help improve emergency care in the province over the next 2 years. And so they start training in March. I think it's March. And they're supposed to start on the trucks come this summer. So they will receive 3 months of training, and then they'll go on the trucks. I went to school for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so for comparison's sake, an EMR, sometimes called an EMT, whereas they have an important role in the emergency medical system, it's better suited on the fire department, I would say, in our case. Like, it's a great entry level. Some systems use it, but we have paramedic vacancies, and this is being used to backfill those vacancies. And so with regards to like their scope of practice, it's this narrow. It's super, like it's basically first aid, CPR, and oxygen administration. So they get trained to, do like your regular first aid and CPR course that everyone would do, and a few other things. But then and then they're able to put oxygen on a patient. Whereas somebody who's trained, I haven't completed my ACP training, but because I have to finish my clinical, because as I mentioned before, I got injured when I was in school, and those last few weeks of clinical placement were interrupted. But like somebody who's an ACP, like they can do first aid, CPR, give narcotics, intubate, do cardioversion, IV access, a whole bunch of stuff. I say intubate people. There's a whole slew of drugs they can give. We're trained in vehicle extrication, so pulling people out of cars and stuff. When a regular like first aid provider does runs say a cardiac arrest, they do CPR and ventilations and oxygen. If I was to run a cardiac arrest, we do those things, and we intubate them, and we do cardiac drugs such as we run epinephrine into them. We can do specific things with the heart monitor. They would run it as an AED, so it does it automatically, whereas we can take it and put it in manual mode and look at things and do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like it's going from a scope of practice like this to like this, and you're asking people with this much training to fill a hole this big. Like, it's not fair to the people that are at work. It's not fair to the people in Nova Scotia, and it's certainly not fair to the people who are getting trained in this position, because you're asking them to do more. Like, you're asking them to fill big shoes, and the issue comes is when you are on like a medium to high acuity level call, a lot of what these guys would be trained to do, or that would be required, they're not allowed to do because it's outside their scope of practice. And so it falls on the paramedic to do all of it. Like, these guys can't, like, if you go through like their actual like full scope of practice, it's a huge PDF document. I won't bring it up, but like, they can't even use like glucometers to like take like blood sugar. Like, that's not in their scope.
Sure. Gaping wound again.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. Like, this is a big step backwards. Like, as we described before, this is just putting meat in the sea, right?
Yeah, same thing they're doing in the military too. It's now we have just all you have to be is a resident of Canada to join the military, not even a citizen, let alone somebody who's born and raised here and feels a debt of service to the society that conferred all these advantages on them. Laura was just saying, Strang is due in court very soon in Yarmouth for his crimes against humanity. Yeah, that was the reference I just made, that Citizens Alliance of Nova Scotia. William Ray is a friend of the program here. I was already chatting with him a little bit about it. And we're going to have him back on to give us the hot wash of how that goes. He doesn't really want to talk about it leading up to the court date itself, which of course is pretty standard protocol and the smart thing to do. And Dale is just letting us know that it's on the 24th. I'm going to be interested. I saw a post, but then I saw a post that had an email in it that said you can join the proceeding virtually and just listen in there. So, but I sent the email to the one that was in the post there, and it came back. It kicked it back to me. The server kicked it back as an invalid email address. So, if I find out, I'll let you guys know on a future stream. But geez, maybe not. Maybe not, because they're coming up on the 24th, and my court date for the judicial review of the climate lockdowns they imposed during the Nova Scotia wildfires is on the 22nd. So I'm going to take the next couple of days off there, guys. Just roll it into the weekend so I can get all prepped up, because I'm a one-man show on this thing. So I'm out there just kind of slugging away as best I can. But, I'm not a professional lawyer, obviously, and I'm going to need some time to prep on that. But I'll be talking to William soon after his date with Strang there, so stay tuned for that. So another thing that I wanted to throw to here, because we were just looking at Tim Houston's his tweet about what a great job he's doing putting that meat in the seat, as you say. I find that there's a kind of overlap between our professions, perhaps between military veterans and emergency health services veterans. And I talk a lot about black humor on the program, like dark humor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
I made this joke to Viva Fry when I was on with them, because I talked about dark humor and stuff. Yeah. And I told him, if you ever heard the things that paramedics say in the ambulance, you'd never call 911 again.
Yeah. And that, I think, is very conformant with my experience in Afghanistan in particular. And I say that humor is a coping strategy for humans. It is. Yeah.
And the way I explain it to people is, you are trying to normalize an abnormal situation, and the best way to do that is to make it funny.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not to like discredit it. It's just so that your brain can comprehend it, because it's not funny. But if you can sit there and laugh at it, then you can take power away from it. You can regain control, and that's the important of it. So if you want to, like, anyone who wants to have any length of a career in like paramedicine or in the military, such as your case, you need to be able to have that black gallows humor, because otherwise you won't make it. And like, anyone who's listened to me talk know that my sense of humor is as dark as it comes. So
Yeah, I believe it. And you wouldn't believe the things that fly out of Canadians' mouths when they're in a war zone. Same thing.
I believe it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you probably would, having had your
Yeah.
experience in the back of an ambulance. But I can remember just getting off the plane in Afghanistan and hearing all these jokes flying around, and I was like, "What the hell is going on here?" Like it was quite shocking at first, but then it's like you can kind of see that everybody's saying these awful things with a little bit of a smirk on their face. And I'm kind of going, okay, this is interesting, and that was what I took from it. Of course, I engaged in it as well. I'm not going to repeat any of those things during peacetime, but you know, the thing that I took from it was, yeah, this black humor is a coping strategy, and basically humans are so they adapt so well to their circumstances, and that's how they do it is like you say, like normalizing it. That's such a good way to put it, by joking about their circumstances. And I've known some guys that had some issues when they came back to Canada, and they were kind of reflecting on some of the things that they said while in theater. You know, I would say I've said to them, like, you know, you told a joke. Okay, there's no harm. You didn't do any harm to anybody by joking. You did what you had to do to get through it with your psyche intact. And as you mentioned, it's just kind of what you have to do in order to have any kind of longevity in a career like that. Yeah, but here is a pretty great clip. I've shown this here before, but it's been quite a while. So this is an excellent review, I think, of the situation that we have here in Nova Scotia, but Canada more broadly. So, Chet, you want to set this up for us, because I think you were actually there, were you?
Yes, I was. This is the day that Morgan and I became very, very good friends.
Morgan Guptill, we're talking about here. Morgan May on Twitter.
Yeah, so this would be about a year ago, and it was in Westville, Nova Scotia, and the premier, who is the third person there, and Karen Oldfield is the lady next to his right. She's like the president of Nova Scotia Health. The person to his left is Michelle Thompson, the health minister, and I don't recall the lady that's on the far left there. I don't remember who she is. But what this was is they did like a Q&A, like town hall, to discuss the problems that we're facing in healthcare. And so I had submitted my question online, and I went there, and I was like, I'm doing pretty good now, but like I was quite sick when I was there. Morgan could attest to this. And they wouldn't answer my question on there. They emailed me afterwards, but I talked about what my question was before, and said, like, when's this going to change? Like, I was injured, I was fired from it. I'm not the only paramedic either, because like there's other guys that I know that are injured, like even like on my own rotation. But this here is you don't see her, she's off camera, but this is Morgan asking a question about the vaccine mandates and when is this going to change for healthcare workers in Nova Scotia. And so this is her question and their response.
All right, here we go, folks.
Your question, please write it down and someone will get back to you. And I know sometimes it's good to be able to ask it in front of the group, but we may not get to everyone. But we've got someone in the back here first. Thank you.
I want to thank you for having us. There's a bit of a preamble to my question. In my opinion, this province is unfortunately violating laws and acts that run our society. Mandates are not law according to Black's Law Dictionary. They are merely recommendations. There are violations of the Personal Health Information Act, the Canadian Charter of Rights, Section 7, the Canadian Bill of Rights, the Canadian Genetic Non-Discrimination Act by force testing employees, and the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act in regards to discrimination based on a protected characteristic, which is an irrational fear of contracting an illness or disease. A Nova Scotia FOIPOP or Freedom of Information request listed at shelleyhipson.ca states that there have been 0 cases of asymptomatic spread in the province. Therefore, if someone is not presenting symptoms, they should not be treated as though they are carrying an illness. If citizens are not able to return to their professions in healthcare based on their private health decisions, that is discrimination. I assume that is why the rest of Canada has permitted unvaccinated employees to return to work, aside from Nova Scotia and British Columbia. So my question is, why is there no accountability in regards to these violations, and why are we not hiring back unvaccinated healthcare workers, especially given the data we have now that suggests the poor efficacy of the vaccines, the many adverse reactions, and the fact that they do not prevent spread of COVID-19? I have heard you state in previous conferences that there are only a little over 100 unvaccinated healthcare workers. I don't believe that this number is accurate, as it and does not reflect the actual number, as many citizens that I know have left work without providing their health information. I know there would be more interest in citizens getting into healthcare if there were no more mandates. And I think the fact that this could save many lives should be taken more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And actually, that is a comment that we've heard.
Well, it was a question, but, and like a boss, by the way. Thank you, Morgan Guptill.
Pretty much at 15 other sessions. So all I would say is I appreciate where you're coming from. We always look, but at this moment in time, that's our policy and we're sticking to it. So I will just take it under advisement and go from there.
Thank you. And I think we had, did you have a question still? Or is it the same? Yeah. I know the pointing, right? I think it was you. And then sorry, who did you see next? Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay. So policy over people, especially in matters of life and death. It's, well, it's a common theme I think we're pointing to here quite a bit. It's the kind of willful disregard for human life and human suffering. It's the callousness, the cruelty. But well done, Morgan, there with that outstanding, well-researched question. And just like I would expect from the morally bankrupt mind of the professional bureaucrat, it's rules over, policy over people. And do you want to fill us in on a little bit of what happened after that there, Chet, and maybe what your experience was like?
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit earlier, but so they didn't take my question because they would read them because they had like a printout of questions, and so I went right up to Shell Thompson afterwards, introduced myself, and was like, you know who I am, like I'm a paramedic in Antigonish, you're from Antigonish too, and I actually had some documentation, like here's some of the adverse events that are being reported, and like I had pericarditis as a result of the vaccine, and it's prevented me from returning to work in a timely manner, and I've been fired from my job at EHS, and I would like to know when this policy is going to change. And the answer I got was, that's the policy, or I said, it's like, I'd like you to take this documentation, like indicating like adverse reactions and stuff. And she's like, I don't want that. And then she told me, it's like, this is the policy, we're sticking with the policy.
Yeah.
And then she walked away from me.
Yeah.
And then the lady who spoke there did the same thing to me. And as I mentioned before, there was a couple of physicians there with me who said, it's like, yeah, and we understand that it's causing myocarditis in a case in rates of 1 in 5,000. And just like, can you like say that out loud?
Right.
Like, listen to what you're saying. 1 in 5,000 are having myocarditis, which is a life-threatening illness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is a cardiac emergency. It is the leading cause of cardiac death in children. You're saying that 1 in 5,000 is an okay rate. And like let's assume like that the rate of myocarditis with COVID is what is bad too. This doesn't prevent you from getting COVID, so you're not eliminating risk, you're amplifying it.
Exactly.
So you're still getting COVID, and you have to take the medication, and like I know of one person who got myocarditis from COVID, but I know a lot more people that got it from the vaccine. I have the Human Rights Act actually here that I'll bring up that Morgan referenced, and I'm going to show everyone here a key component that's in the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. If you want to,
I am familiar.
Yeah, so I think this is worth showing everybody. So if you want to accept the screen share there.
Yeah, 1000%, bro. Sec. Here we go.
So this is the Human Rights Act of Nova Scotia, and it has something that's a little unique to it. Oops, I gotta zoom out a little bit here. Apologies. Oh, I can slide it with the hand. That'll work. So the prohibited discrimination is prohibited on these grounds. So prohibited of discrimination. No person shall, in respect of provision of access facilities, accommodation, the purchase or sale of property, employment, volunteer public service, a publication, broadcast, or advertisement, or the membership in a professional association, business or trade association, employers organizations, or employees organizations, discriminate against an individual of class of individuals on account of age, race, color, religion, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, physical disability or mental disability, and irrational fear of contracting an illness or disease, ethnic, national, or aboriginal origin, family status, marital status, source of income, or political beliefs. I'll read that again. An irrational fear of contracting an illness or disease. If you don't have COVID, you can't give COVID to somebody else. If I am unvaccinated, or in my case, under-vaccinated, and I contract COVID or some other respiratory infection, do you know what I do? I call in sick.
Right.
And that's it. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, 1000%. And, you know, I have made the attempt that to stand on the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act as I was being arrested for not wearing a mask. And I can tell you that that failed utterly. As even as polite as the attending officer was trying to be, it seems to be of no force or effect in any practical way. So all of the systems, all of the rules that they hold so dear, that were put in place to protect us, don't really seem to be producing the desired effect in any way, shape, or form. I had that experience actually while I was at the Nova Scotia Liquor Commission here in Sydney River, Nova Scotia, trying to, that was early December 2021. So I was just after having been released from the military, and I wasn't set up with all my prescriptions through Veterans Affairs just yet. So I was trying to purchase my medically prescribed cannabis, and they were refusing me service to my medicine on the grounds that I wasn't wearing a mask. Yeah, that's just, again, the level of petulance and cruelty, and then having to go through the experience of being arrested and thrown in a cell and all that stuff as a, recently released traumatized veteran. Just unbelievable. The kind of things that
there's something worth mentioning too, like what they told you was PPE wasn't appropriate PPE. And so there are people that were at risk for this. I know some of them. People that, could have used our help and could have used proper guidance on this. And you told them to do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's just another level of egregiousness to this. Like you told them things that weren't true. Like those like even if it's a surgical mask is designed as a spit guard. It's to catch spittle. So like when you're in surgery or you're intubating something, you're not getting spittle in their eyes or in an open wound or something. It doesn't catch viruses. It catches spit and snot and mucus. That's all it catches.
Yeah.
Um,
and
another
it's
thing
correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong, but it's like a microwave, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, a
I know.
microwave being like 1/1,000,000th of a meter. One like a micrometer would be 1/1,000,000th of a meter, but when we're talking about viruses, we're talking about nanometers, so that's more like a trillionth of a meter.
Yeah.
So it's not just the case that it's not even the case that you're trying to stop a mosquito with a chain link fence. It's this thing is orders of magnitude, like the virus itself. The weave, the openings in the weave are orders of magnitude to the tune of like 1,000,000 times larger than the virus itself.
Yeah, exactly. Like even like an N95 is, you know, it's not gonna do much. And like you need to be proper fit tested. You need to be clean shaven.
Yeah.
And like the mass fit tests are garbage. Like I've passed one with a beard before, and it's just like even that's not great. Like you need like a proper full seal respirator, and like it's ridiculous. Like an N95 can help with like bacterial or fungal pneumonia. Like if you're trying to catch that or prevent that, but like you're not going to stop viruses. Like it goes in your eye. It goes in your eye. Like
exactly.
But I have something here I'll share just for fun, just because
Sure
it
thing.
ties into those rules for the sake of rules thing. So when I came back to Nova Scotia after going to New Brunswick and trying to go to the trucker convoy, I was questioned. I was stopped at the border. I was questioned and put under what they call quarantine, but it was more like house arrest for 2 weeks. And if I left the property, it was a $2,422 fine, and then an $11,622 fine if I left the house. And this is when I'm by myself, extremely sick, and wasn't even allowed to go get food. I wasn't allowed to go to the grocery store. If I go to the grocery store, boom, we're gonna fine you this amount of money. And it's like I don't have any infectious disease. I have pericarditis, which is not contagious, but it's simply because you're not vaccinated enough. So we're going to watch you, and we're going to fine you if you even think of leaving the property. And they watched me. They did.
Wow. Yeah, police state. I think that's the term we're driving for here. The police state that we now live in. So just incredible.
Oh, and because I mentioned it, here's something fun. I showed this before on Jason's show before, but this was my sign for Ottawa that I didn't get to use before I waterproofed it.
There's nothing mild about myocarditis. That was another atrocious lie they put out there. Mild myocarditis, which I never heard about until like 5 minutes ago.
Doesn't exist. There's no such thing as mild myocarditis. There's not. It's just less severe.
Yeah.
It is a life-threatening injury or illness. It is a cardiac emergency.
And permanent too, right?
It can be. So what myocarditis is, for those who are not familiar, is it's the inflammation of the muscle tissue in the heart. This can lead to scarring, and a number of other things. Like you can do the inflammation. It can lead to like poor oxygen perfusion to different parts of the heart, which can cause damage, can cause scarring. And when the way your heart works is you have it's basically electrified meat is what it is. So you have basically like an electrical impulse that sends through your heart. You got kind of like specialty cells that kind of trigger the reaction. You have sodium and potassium ions moving in and out, and once you reach a certain threshold in like a negative charge, it tells calcium ions to come in. They flood in. It tells the muscles the cells to pull together, so your muscles contract, and so it all needs to kind of work in sync. And if those cells become damaged and they can't do their job correctly, maybe they can't move ions in and out correctly, or maybe they're dead and they're not working at all. The synchronicity of all of that electrical flow can get knocked out of sync, and then that can lead to a cardiac arrhythmia where your heart isn't beating in correct time. It's like when you're drummer, or like a drummer in a band, like gets screwed up. Like if, like say, like one of the the leg on the floor tom breaks and it's like rolling around, you're still trying to hit it. It's gonna lead to problems because the way your heart beats is you have your upper chambers, which is your atria, and your lower chambers, which is your ventricles. Your atria will contract, push blood down into your ventricles, and then your ventricles contract, your atria relaxes. When your ventricles contract, it pushes blood from your heart to your lungs to become oxygenated, or pushes oxygenated blood out to your body to be used. And so these things have to go in sync, so one after the other. But if say your ventricles are the more important ones because they're the ones pushing things out, and if they get knocked at a time and they're not syncing up, is they may be squeezing at a point where they haven't filled fully with blood, or maybe if they like contract before the atria contracts, there may not even be any blood down here, and so they squeeze and nothing happens, right? And then this is like if we keep going down this road, it'd be a full cardiology lesson, but like that's one of the ways that people can go into cardiac arrest is when they when your heart's still squeezing and doing its thing, but it's not moving any blood, right?
And I just flashed up on the screen here. This is just kind of a still image of a stream that you did with Jason Levine and Dr. Peter McCullough. Yeah. So I figured I'd throw that up there just for people's reference if you want to go check it out on Jason's channel there on Rumble. Sounds like you guys had a really good conversation about all of the mechanics of this in terms of the cardiological impacts, huh?
Yeah, we talked about vaccine injuries, some of the protocols that have been being used to try to help some people, because a lot of people who have been injured in this situation, it's a lot of inflammatory issues among like tissue injury and stuff. So there's no like catch-all that helps everybody, because it's a multitude of things, right? Like this thing just wrecks the system. And we talked about cardiology, we talked about myocarditis, we talked a little bit about my case, and like so many physicians and have said I was just batshit crazy and I didn't know what I was talking about and I should shut up. And Dr. Peter McCullough, at one point, I wish I had the timestamp for you, but he just goes, any like resident or like doctors, like, you need to listen to this guy. He knows exactly what he's talking about, and like he's exceptional. He's like, it's one thing to go from like being like belittled constantly for like 2 years by physicians to then receive tremendous praise from Dr. Peter McCullough himself. Yeah. It's quite the honor.
It's kind of that diehard principle at play again. I think, we're the middle management types, optics obsessed and the like. There's a kind of let them eat cake snobbery, I think, where they just sort of look down on the people who are actually doing the work. And the fact of the matter is, the people that are engaged with the work tend to have a kind of appreciation for what it really takes to make things happen in the world that's just sort of escapes the Asperger's afflicted managerial class.
Yeah, it was funny. I like when all this happened, I was just like, I was trying to get somebody to like at least like look at like my EKGs and stuff and say like, hey, like what you're saying is correct. And like I could go through it all on here, but we won't do it. But like, I even explained it to like people at the NCI, like some of the volunteers there, sat down with the girls and explained, this is what's happened, and walked them through like a cardiology textbook. I was like, do you see the pattern, how the patterns have changed here? Like the way I like to explain it is like, when you look at an EKG, you're looking at a graph of electrical activity in the heart. That's what an electrocardiogram is. It's an electric graph of the heart. That's what it is. ECG is what's also called. EKG is the old German spelling.
Okay.
It's either or, because the Germans spell cardio with a K. But the idea is you should, like, let's say you have a car and you drive to town, and you take the same route every day. If you plot the velocity of the car on a graph that's driving to town the same way every day, that graph should look about the same every time. So like every time, like maybe you're going like this fast for one road, and then another road you're going this fast. And there's a road where you have to drive slow, and it would look the same all the same every time you do that. And it's the same thing for your heart. Like every time it goes through its process and the electricity travels through, it should look the same. You get the I'll just show you a picture just so it makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
I won't give you a full cardiology lesson because that's not what today's about. But so
yeah,
so that,
I mean,
yeah.
I understand it to be, well, because
Yeah.
you know, I come from an electronics background, so you're talking about a circuit here, and this is a graphical representation of voltage versus time. Right?
So like that first bit, that's your atria contracting. This QRS complex here, that's your atria relaxing and your ventricles contracting. And then there's a pause, and there's your T wave, and that's your ventricles relaxing. And the U wave is, ignore that. That's an anomaly that sometimes pops in every now and then. But it's basically every time your heart squeezes, does this, and then relaxes, it'll look the same. You will see changes in this when something goes wrong or something takes longer to happen. The same idea is like if you have like that car that's driving to town every day, if you plot the graph and all of a sudden there's a spot where like it's suddenly like it goes to like 0 and it stays there for a while, you know something went wrong. It's like, okay, well the car had to stop. Why did the car stop? So you can look at all the other things like, oh well, there's construction, so it makes sense. And so you can, am I making sense there? Is that a decent explanation? That's like why
I think so. Yeah.
And so like I pointed out like there's telltale signs like for heart attacks, pericarditis, myocarditis, electrolyte imbalances that would change the shape of these things. And I pointed all these things out, and like I like was like sent it to everybody. I was like, I'm not crazy. I know what this is. Like, and had like cardiology, like I have a stack of cardiology textbooks over my bookshelf, just like a couple feet from me. And like I say, even sent it to like Scarlett Martin, and she's like, yeah, that looks like what you say it is. And then like she watched like the episode of me and Peter McCullough, and she's like, fuck off. Why did you ask me if to confirm your cardiology stuff? It's like, you know your shit way better than I do. Like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right on.
It's like, and so it was just so nice to be finally validated, and to be validated by Dr. Peter McCullough of all people. It was just like, it's
praise from Caesar.
Yeah, it's exactly it. Because it's like everyone just told me I was full of shit, and it's like, no, man. Like I can, like if I pull up my EKGs, here I'm gonna pull one up, and I'm gonna. I know a lot of it's gonna be Greek, but there's one part that you'll be able to tell, because anyone can read this part. Oh, no, it's the wrong one. I want this one.
Colleen is letting us know tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the weekly Relay Jason interviews wonderful Canadians across the country, starting in Newfoundland. And she gives us the link to the Rumble channel for the Jason Levine show there. So, we try to support all the independent journalists out there who are on the right side of history. So, by all means, go check out Jason's show there tonight. It'll be, I'm sure, a lot of great commentary coming from across the country. So, thanks for that, Colleen. Here
there we go. I meant to block out the names. So this is a 12 lead EKG. I won't go through all of this, but there's like things like ST elevation and stuff. But can you read this section right here? That line.
Normal sinus rhythm.
And what is it? That's a normal progression of a heartbeat, so it's going at a regular rate. What does it say below that?
Possible left atrial enlargement.
My atria is enlarged because it's inflamed.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the EKG. When I talked about that, the first wave is the P wave. It looks at your atria. So normally it's like a hump, but because when you have an enlarged atria, if one side is enlarged, instead of it just being like a regular hump, you get like a camel back. So it's like a hump and then like a bigger hump. It looks like a mountain range. And like you could see, you can see it's a hump, and then there's the bigger hump.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know that then this is probably a little Greek to people. And then in V1, so like,
And what is the outcome of that? Like the impact on heart function?
in my case, it's probably like, I don't know. Well, I've never had a proper look at my heart. No one would do it. It can lead to scarring. It could just be painful for a long period of time. It's hard to say. It all depends. Some people, it may be just, that's the way it is. Some people just have enlarged hearts by nature, maybe due to prolonged drug abuse or something like that, or years and years and years of elevated blood pressure, so that their heart like builds up in muscle because it has to squeeze so damn hard to push against the high pressure in your arteries and veins, and so like it just like thickens up, which is extremely unhealthy. But it's hard to say. You'd have to take a good look that nobody did and wouldn't do. It's possible to recover fully, but it takes a long time. Like I'd say, like when this all started, I was bedridden for months. I was extremely sick. When I met James Topp, the first thing that is when I met Jeremy McKenzie too, and first thing he said to me when I introduced myself was like, "Geez, man, are you all right?" Because I had just walked up the stairs and I was soaked.
Yeah.
Christian George was like, "Geez, man," like he took like my heart rate and stuff after I like walked up just like the stairs to like get in the barn, and my heart rate was going like 130. Like normally my heart rate sits at like 60. Like before this all happened, I used to be like made out of rope. And like I was sweating and I was drenched. Like didn't walk all that far. Alex Cabana saw me too. Like he can attest to it. My mom and dad could tell you too. They saw me. They were there. Like I probably maybe about 80% back to where I was. Like I still get chest pain here and there, but like it's a lot better than it was. I can do some like light exercise. I'm not gonna push myself too hard, and yet because I don't know the extent of what happened. So I'm taking it very slow and very easy, and that's part of the reason why I fared so well. Is I knew what it was, so I went full stop. I didn't exercise. Unfortunately, I barely did anything. Like my parents like had to take over doing everything for months. When they left, like they always go down south every year, and like dad got guys from his work to come and shovel the walk and the driveway and made sure everything was taken care of, because I couldn't do it. Because the real risk is like if I go out and go out and shovel too hard, you push your heart too hard, it starts freaking out and causing all this. You can knock yourself into an arrhythmia, and like that's what happens to people with myocarditis. That's how they end up dying, is they push themselves too hard and their heart can't handle it, and they knock themselves into a cardiac arrhythmia. So that electrical function gets basically knocked out of alignment. The drummer, if you will, starts playing the song too fast and loses time, and then it all goes to shit. And so the reason why I fared as well is because I knew.
Perhaps another analogy that I just want to do this to confirm my understanding, but
of course,
it's like the heart is the motor of your body, and when you have a timing issue with the motor of your car, it stalls. So
yes, it does.
Is that essentially what we're talking about?
That's exactly it. So there's and I'll talk about, so there's a few different types of cardiac arrest. They all result in the same thing, like your heart stops to deliver blood to the body. There's asystole, which is when someone flatlines, so there's no electrical activity whatsoever, which usually means you rarely ever come back from that. It's not. Then there's ventricular tachycardia, where the ventricles, the lower chambers of your heart, I'll bring up a picture of the heart here, just so. There you go. So you have the lower chambers of your heart right here. Those are the ones that push the oxygenated blood out to your body and like to your brain and stuff. And then it also pushes unoxygenated blood to your lungs to go pick up oxygen and come back.
Yep.
And so it's pushing stuff out. So the problem is if your ventricles, if they're beating too fast or out of sync, and so they're not lining up, primarily if they're going way too fast, such as ventricular tachycardia, they're squeezing so fast that they don't get to fill up with blood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's squeezing, but there's only like little bits of blood go in there, and so like you can't generate a blood pressure because they're not filling up, because like you're just getting little squirts of it in there, and then you don't get blood to your brain, you go unconscious and you die. The other one is what's called ventricular fibrillation. So instead of it beating too fast, all of the electrical activity in it is just kind of all over the place. So instead of like an organized rhythm where it's signaling to all the cells to squeeze in unison, they're all squeezing at random times, and it's just doing this. It just jiggles. It's just like it's a muscle spasm. And so then it's not even squeezing, so it's not pushing blood out. You don't get blood to your brain, you don't get to the rest of your body. And then there's what we would call pulseless electrical activity, where your heart's working just fine. It's squeezing, it's doing its thing, but it's not moving blood either because it's not squeezing hard enough, or there's just no blood there, right? Mm-hmm. So like somebody can be in cardiac arrest and their heart's still beating, but it's not delivering any blood because you have a volume issue. And for clarity's sake, like when you talk about defibrillator, defibrillators don't start your heart, they stop it. Yeah. So what it does is your heart's electrical activity is all out of whack, and the defibrillator hits it with a big shock, basically gives it a slap with the hopes that it restarts at the top and follows an organized rhythm, so you get back into that. It's like going up telling the drummers, like, you screwed up, start the song again, and they start over.
That conforms my understanding too, just based on my first aid and the defibrillators, the auto defibrillators that we were talking about there a little while ago that are
they measure the electrical activity, and they're looking for ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation, which have a certain appearance on the cardiac monitor. And I'll just for fun, I'll just show you this, just so you can see. Oh, it looks different. Just because I showed you everybody what a normal heart rhythm looks like, it's because that bump, that spiky bit, and then another bump. So, for instance, here's an example of when things go wrong. This is a very extreme example. This is what's called ventricular tachycardia. That does not look like the other thing now, does it?
Not even close.
Exactly. So there you go. I'll just give you an example.
Yeah, and all of this basically results in a lack of oxygenated blood to the brain, and the result is death.
Yeah, you go unconscious pretty quick.
Yeah, I believe it. And Rob was just saying, I had an enlarged heart as a teenager from intense physical activity. It eventually went down on its own, but I deferred the COVID vaccines due to the risk. The CAF, Canadian Armed Forces, did not care and still enforced the mandate on me. Yeah, Rob is one of our 5 Fs there who stood on principle and accepted the consequences of his principled decision. So, that is basically the definition of courage there, folks, is, being afraid and then doing the right thing anyway.
Yeah.
So with that, I think I'll round us out again with with Winston Churchill here, because this is the theme that we see across the board. Their insatiable lust for power is only equaled by their incurable impotence in exercising it. We see that across the board with the public service and the politicians just refusing to acknowledge any kind of error on their end, doubling down on the same policies that got us into this mess in the first place, even as they are trying to clean up the havoc that they have wreaked. So it's a pretty sad state of affairs. But Chet, man, thanks so much for coming on and being so generous with your time here. You know,
I have all the time in the world, man. It's one of the perks of getting fired.
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I'm just,
Yeah.
you know, a full-time freedom fighter now, and I think that we're basically brothers in service in that regard, like trying to serve our communities, our countries.
I agree. So,
yeah, and I don't know what the heck else I'd be doing with my time as a retired veteran if it weren't standing up to this madness when such action is so desperately needed. So I'll throw out a few comments here before we sign off. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll end on something with that regard. If you want to go to the comments first, and then I'll show you something.
Sure thing. This is let me see. So Evelyn is here, and she's saying thank you, Jeff and Chet. And Evelyn is your aunt, is that correct?
She is my aunt. Yes.
Yeah, right on. Small world, guys. So many great people out there coming together right now. Cindy is saying, thanks, Jeff. Hearts. Chet, I wish you the best. And Darlene is saying, very informative live today. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, everyone. Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would just echo that sentiment there, Chet. I do appreciate your expertise. And, you know, you're obviously a very sharp guy and an asset, a strong asset in this fight. So,
yeah.
And Madam Breezy is saying, thank you for educating us, Chet. Debbie is saying, thank you. Great information. And Wild Bill is here saying, excellent show today. Yes, a brother. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who feels that way. Wild Bill is one of our favorite boomers around here and also a CAF veteran. So Rob is saying, thanks, Jeff and Chet. Great stream. Share it out and have a great day. Yes, please. Everybody give us a share. Smash that like button, especially on Rumble, because it feeds the algorithm, or so I'm told. And Colleen is saying, thank you, Jeff and Chet. Another excellent Radical Candor. Yeah, this is my first week of Radical Candor, and it's not going to be a full week. I just want to reiterate, everybody, because I need to take the next couple of days to really hit the books for my appearance in court on Monday to, you know, call these guys out on some of their heavy-handedness with the but the climate lockdowns that we all faced here in Nova Scotia there recently. So, and over on Rumble, Nurse Vader is saying, great stream. Let us know when you're in Ontario. Cheers. Will do. I will keep everybody apprised of my movements if there are any in the near future. And Douglas is saying, keep on marching, soldiers of truth. And RJ Sawyer is saying, take your time, Jeff, no worries. Yeah, it's always a question of priorities, folks. And, you know, I have to attend to another priority that I think supersedes the podcast right now, for now. But don't worry, I'll be back in no time later next week. So, Chet, leave us with the final thought there, brother. Take it away.
So when I was in high school, I interviewed my grandfather about his service during the Second World War. He served in the RCAF. He was an aviation mechanic working on Halifax and Lancasters, and then later he would be deployed to the Pacific as a bombardier and radio operator in a Mosquito fighter bomber. And we talked about his service, and one of the things that he said, in particular with the Air Force, because there was no conscription for that, is in Canada, nobody gets drafted. You have to be crazy enough to volunteer. Which was made further kind of funny because when he got to Quebec to train, the Air Force base there was a converted mental asylum with padded windows and bars, padded walls and bars in the windows. But this is something I talked about at great length with this man here, who I have a picture of. You want to share my screen?
Sure thing.
James Topp and I spoke at great length about what had happened and those who I know who had been harmed and what happened to me and so many others. And what James is looking at is my grandfather's victory in Europe pin, because this price has already been paid.
Right.
We shouldn't have to pay it again.
1000%, brother. I think that's That's a great thought to leave us on too, and that's what I find to be so morally injurious about this whole affair is just that the lack of appreciation on the part of leadership for the fact that people have already died for these freedoms. Not just your grandfather's generation, but 158 Canadians in Afghanistan, for that matter, and unfortunately, the guys from World War II are not around to kind of keep these people in line anymore, and it's up to those of us who are to make sure that we do everything possible to safeguard our inheritance for future generations. So
yeah, my grandfather never would have stood for this, but I am my grandfather's grandson.
Yeah.
So.
And I do think that that's why this is happening. It's a big part of it is because those old heroes are not with us anymore. They never would have stood for this stuff.
No.
So anyway, on that note, folks, that's a really great note to leave it on, Chet. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And please reach out anytime. Keep in touch. You have my coordinates and everything. And, I'll let you know when I'm down toward the mainland way next time. So, nice flag.
From a James top, as in thanks. So,
beautiful, man.
I still gotta get it framed, and so we'll put it up. But,
awesome. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing with us, brother.
You're welcome. Anytime. If you have any questions, you know where I'm at. So
yeah, 100%. We'll have you back on anytime, man. So take care for now, and to everybody who stayed with us, stay frosty and stay safe out there.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs.